Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brélade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre. Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labby.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mesick.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Porée.
Présente.
Monsieur le député War.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell. Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Présent.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à l'Assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle du siècle. Amen.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
So, Madame le Connétable de Saint Laurent is undergoing an operation, and so can I ask that she be stated as malade?
Vous jurez que Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Défait.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Sir, the Constable of St. Martin's is malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Southern.
Défait.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Défait. Les États sont constitués. Moving to the order paper, there are a number of subordinate enactments under B. Number of matters presented or laid as described under C. The following matters have been lodged under D. P70, proposed budget government plan, third amendment. Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson, head of expenditure, lodged on the 1st of December by the Council of Ministers. P70, proposed budget government plan, fifth amendment. Upper Earnings Limited, lodged on the 26th of November by Deputy Coles. P70, proposed budget government plan, 11th amendment, overpayment of social security contributions, lodged on the 1st of December by the Council of Ministers. P70, proposed budget government plan, 14th amendment, mortgage interest tax relief, lodged on the 1st of December by Deputy Catherine Curtis. P70, proposed budget government plan, 19th amendment, extend free school meals, lodged on the 1st of December by the Council of Ministers. P70, proposed budget government plan, 30th amendment, no agricultural loans for cannabis-based products, lodged on the 1st of December by the Council of Ministers. P70, proposed budget government plan, 31st amendment, empty of residential properties, lodged on the 1st of December by Deputy Alex Curtis. P70, proposed budget government plan, 31st amendment, second amendment, empty residential properties, lodged on the 1st of December by the Council of Ministers. P70, proposed budget government plan, 35th amendment, reduction in public expenditure, lodged on the 1st of December by Deputy Moore. P108, draft limited partnerships amendment law, lodged on the 26th of November by the Minister for External Relations. P109, draft register of names and addresses amendment law, lodged on the 2nd of December. And finally, P70, proposed budget government plan, 20th amendment, teaching Gérier, lodged today by the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Nothing under E, F, G or H. A number of written questions to which answers have been provided. We now come to Deputy Joan.
Yes, I don't know the procedure, but just that written question 448 2025, it was for the Minister for Infrastructure, not the Minister for Treasury and Resources. That replied to me, so I just don't know if that can be corrected on there.
So is the order paper wrong or?
The order paper is wrong, yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, that'll be noted. So we now come to oral questions with notice, and I ask Deputy Andrews to put his question. I ask Deputy Ward to put his question to the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the selection of Space Hub Limited to lead the redevelopment of the exterior area at Fort Regent, will the Minister, in her capacity as shareholder representative, provide detail regarding the criteria the States of Jersey Development Company used to determine that there were no commercial landscape architecture practices currently operating in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So, Jersey Development Company carried out research into local landscape architecture practices via market familiarity, professional networks, past experience, and continuous market scanning. This research identified one landscape architecture firm operating as a sole trader and 2 garden designers. In addition, 3 of the larger local architectural practices offer landscape design services. However, these functions are outsourced off-island. There is one local architectural practice with a qualified landscape architect, and this firm is invited to tender for the role alongside 3 UK landscape architecture practices. JDC carefully assesses delivery risk in all of its business activities. It is critical to the success of a project that they appoint an experienced team with a positive delivery track record that have the necessary human resources to deliver against a particular brief and adhere to the programme. Fort Regent is a large and complex regeneration project with the external landscape area totalling 30,000 square metres or 7.4 acres. Jersey Development Company assessed the tenders on the basis of a wide range of criteria. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. And I would say to the Minister, thank you for the answer, and I appreciate that. It's interesting about key delivery risk, because I understand that the Jersey Development Company did an expressions of interest about 12 months ago about how they could use more local businesses. And one of the problems with their risk assessment was that there was about 3 qualified practitioners. So anybody with less than 3 qualified practitioners was considered to be a risk to the business, a risk to JDC, and therefore could not go forward with any procurement. I've been approached by 2 businesses who said they were perfectly capable of doing that, but they were totally unaware of any expression of interest because nothing was put on the public procurement portal. How are we ever going to support local businesses, recognising that they are limited in their scale and what they can do, but could come together in a more cooperative way and develop local businesses, local expertise? How are we going to change this culture, Minister?
Minister.
So, as I say, I think JDCs who have extensive knowledge of the area identified one firm who operated as a sole trader and 2 garden designers. I think, sir, our procurement, I think our procurement practices tend to look to a business who can supply. If a number of businesses want to get together and create some form of partnership and make tenders, there is nothing stopping them doing that. But the businesses themselves, I think, sir, have to come together and create a plan that they can put to JDC. I think for JDC to appoint 3 different panels and then try and manage 3 different practices and manage those 3 practices together as separate entities to do one very large piece of work, that's going to be a very difficult thing for them to do. I am sure we do look to engaging local practices as far as we can, but what matters is that we have people appointed who can deliver a very large scale of work. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to if the Minister can clarify if the expression of interest was shared with the Jersey Architectural Society or Chamber of Commerce received notification that firm is looked for to create the design.
Minister.
Sir, I don't know the answer to that question.
Supplementary?
Absolutely. Thank you. And second supplementary, based on the Minister's answer, just to make sure there are 3 firms that work with outside firms as a partnership to deliver landscaping. Why these firms were dismissed? Because they're a local-based company that can cooperate with UK company and actually deliver a combined knowledge than just to go to the UK one.
Minister?
Sir, I think the point is that even if we'd appointed a local practice, the work would still have gone to an off-island provider because they would have had to outsource the work because they did not have local internal resource. I think, sir, engaging one partner to appoint another seems slightly ineffective when we could just simply go direct to the supplier of a service. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. On a similar line, the Minister did confirm that there were some skills on island that SOJDC found through a local market exercise. But once it was confirmed that procurement should be opened up to the off-island bidders, did SOJDC include any requirement for on-island partnerships with those who have it as their direct skill set, to be part of a partnership in that procurement to ensure that investment off island does deliver local capacity building?
Minister.
So people are asking very, very detailed questions that I simply don't know the answer to. Thank you.
Complementary.
Yes, please, sir. At a general level, as shareholder representative for many organisations, does she believe that partnership then in skills like landscaping should be something where development is delivered in Ireland with off-island partners, and will she note that this kind of partnership between off-island and on-island is done in many sectors, such as the digital services area, which has proven we can build more local talent by working with off-island providers?
Minister.
So I think yes, I agree in principle with what he's saying. If we appoint a local business who then has to bring in off-island expertise, but we are talking about a project. Landscape architecture is not something that's irregular, unlike the digital environment where everybody has an interest. There will be a handful of developments requiring extensive landscape architecture regularly, so training someone to landscape architecture and then find there's no work for them may be counterproductive. But I am sure JDC will work to those criteria to try and involve local practitioners as soon as they can. And in fact, I do know that they will be seeking to appoint a local main contractor for the construction when that arises. Sir, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Reniff.
Yes, the government has a policy around procurement that does try to encourage local use of local contractors, I believe. Does the Minister believe that, is there such a policy in place for the arm's length organisations such as JDC? And if not, does the Minister believe there should be one?
Minister.
So yes, there is. The Memoranda of Understanding, certainly with JDC, requires them to follow appropriate procurement procedures. Thank you.
Supplementary.
So I'm not sure appropriate covers what I was talking about, which was the use of trying to prioritise the use or capture the value, added value of using local companies as opposed to off-island. Will the Minister, is the Minister satisfied that JDC have done everything in their power in this occasion to ensure that that trade-off was followed through?
Minister.
Sir, I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister outline to the Assembly how she receives information about a procurement process so that she can provide oversight and be reassured that it's being conducted as per policy?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my officers have regular quarterly meetings with the board of JDC. However, I think what we have to remember is that JDC is overseen particularly by the Regeneration Steering Group, which comprises a number of ministers, and that group will have more detailed reporting on particular projects. Fort Regent, in this case, is owned by Jersey Property Holdings and is within the responsibility of the Minister for Infrastructure, and the Regeneration Steering Group has made the decision to engage JDC for the Fort Regent Regeneration Project. There is, I believe, plenty of oversight of JDC and what it does, and plenty of reporting. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Does the Minister consider that the procurement policy should be reviewed?
Minister.
So there is a procurement policy. I don't know how long it's been in place. I will ask JDC to review it. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ward, final supplementary.
Yes, sir. I'm struggling here because this all sounds like using local businesses is in the too difficult to handle box of government, when in fact it should be the absolute priority of it. I do not understand how it is not possible for the JDC not to advertise this work on their public procurement portal. Can she explain why that omission was made?
Minister.
Sir, I think I've explained what the process was, that through an extensive amount of research, they identified who was available locally, and the one firm that was available locally was asked to tender with other practices. We have to remember, sir, that this is, as I say, 90% of the cost of regeneration for region will be in the physical construction, and that will be, I believe, placed locally. Yes, everybody does want to engage local businesses where they can, but the local businesses need to be able to deliver, and the scale of the businesses we had in the island, my understanding is that they were not big enough. I'm sure JDC will be engaging local operators where everybody tries to do that where appropriate and where it gets value for money, and crucially, delivery and performance to a standard that everyone expects. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister.
So, may we raise the defo on the Chief Minister, please?
Members content to raise the defo on the Chief Minister? Defo is raised.
So I would like to advise the Assembly that I will be from 10 to 11 attending medical appointments and beyond.
Question 2, Deputy Wilson will ask of the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister agree to publish the full actuarial modelling evidence behind our recent public statement that the Social Security Fund could pay pensions and benefits for 7.5 years, even if no contributions were made? And will she advise whether this was verified internally by the Treasury Department or by the actuaries?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. There was no actuarial modelling required for this because it was just a simple sum. The figures are contained within the proposed government budget, and it would have not been the type of question that would have been appropriate to ask actuaries.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Minister has made a number of statements about the Social Security Fund's future sustainability and capacity to pay pensions. Could she explain how such statements, definitive statements, can be made when there is no updated actuarial information that's been made available or published?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. As members will be aware, I have received 2 letters from actuaries, and I have commissioned an extra additional report from the actuaries that will be available ahead of next year's budget.
Deputy Renouf.
So one of the things the Minister has, and the government in fact has said repeatedly, is that 7.5 years is very good coverage compared to other funds. Is she aware, or did she notice, for example, that the largest economy in the world, the United States, the insurance funds have 10 years coverage, and that perhaps that puts the coverage of the Jersey funds in a slightly different light?
Minister.
The United States is one country that I didn't look at as a comparison. We looked at more similar jurisdictions to us. Again, we will look to the advice from the actuaries when we receive it, and that will be open to the next Assembly to take decisions based on.
Supplementary.
Sir, does the Minister accept that her answer suggests that the government looks as hard as it needs to find the evidence it wants to support its case, rather than actually looking to objectively discover whether the fund is in a good state or not?
Minister.
No.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Well, would the Minister explain why the assumption was plus 1% above expected, and not other assumption that the Minister put towards the actuaries to review?
Minister.
So I don't think that question's related to this question. I think it's related to the oral question that Deputy Renouf is asking later.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Wilson, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I didn't hear the Minister confirm that she would commit to publishing the actuarial information, but can she give an assurance that her work will involve remaining clear and transparent about the assumptions, and can she assure us that these will be realistic in light of current economic and demographic pressures?
Minister.
So the equation used to refer to the sum that is referred to in the question is quite simple. The equation is the end amount in the fund at the end of the year divided by the payments made out of the fund in benefits. All advice that I've received from actuaries has been published.
Thank you, Minister. Question 3, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Renouf.
Will the Minister detail the decision-making process in relation to identifying the total amount of money available for growth bids in the proposed budget government plan 2026 to 29, and on what basis the different growth allocations were decided?
Minister.
Sir, I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, the budget was developed using a process that will be familiar to both current and any former ministers. A series of workshops were held that considered the latest financial forecasts based on the assumptions provided by the Fiscal Policy Panel. From there, decisions focused on how best to balance the budget while prioritising areas requiring urgent investment. It's important to note that we don't automatically allocate every available penny that we have to growth, and so there is no fixed calculation of how much is there available for growth. This year, there was a very limited growth process, and there was no open invitation for departments to submit business cases requesting additional funding. Instead, political discussions were focused on delivering the common strategic policy and addressing key risks. This approach was iterative, with ministers working together until a consensus was reached. Formal decisions were then recorded and the budget lodged. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you. I think it's clear from that answer that the total amount of growth bid was decided, as the Minister says, in an iterative process, and that therefore the money that was to be taken from the Social Security grant was not determined by looking at how much the Social Security grant could afford to pay. It was a result of determining how much the government wanted. Can the Minister explain why the government didn't start with how much money might be available rather than how much it wanted to spend?
Minister.
Sir, as I say, we do not run a growth process. We have financial rules like the need to keep the consolidated fund positive and principles around running balanced budgets. We shouldn't be spending everything, so we don't start with a calculation of how much is available for growth. As I've said, sir, the need for investment drove some very difficult decisions about how it could be funded. And we have focused on things that are most important, so healthcare, children, and key risk matters. Having agreed that we needed that investment, it was then a matter of looking at the funding options. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Given FPP advice, the global outlook and the state of the island's own finances, what conversations did the Minister have about reducing expenditure rather than allowing any growth at all?
Minister.
Sir, I think we've explained that we have had decisions about reducing expenditure, and we are looking to deliver savings in 2025. I don't have the number in front of me, but I think in the region of £20 million. A similar amount of savings was delivered last year. The hospital has its own financial recovery programme, which from memory, which may not be accurate, stands at about £18 million. So we are asking departments to make savings. Departments have been told that there is not new money and that they have to work with what they have, and departments are constantly being asked to make sure that they are driving efficiency and making savings. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I think the point is about overall expenditure and whether that can continue at current levels or should not be reduced on a year-by-year basis.
Minister.
So there's a difficult balance to be reached between having no growth and actually making cuts. We are trying. We have sought to constrain spending. We have shown that. We have reduced headcount. We have reduced the reliance on consultants. We are reducing unnecessary management layers, and we are trying to take out extra activities. But the problem is people still want us to spend money. Even in this assembly, people are still coming forward with requests for additional funding. Yes, we do need to cut spending. We need to do that in a careful and sustained way, and we need to really start, all of us, thinking about what we really need rather than what we want. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir.
The Minister spoke about limiting the number of growth bids. However, 52 million has been proposed in this forthcoming government plan. So I want to ask the Minister, what consideration was given to reprofiling existing government expenditure over that of putting forward growth bids? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I'm sure that was considered. We, as I say, there were some very difficult decisions. There were clear needs for investment in healthcare and children's services and certain of the emergency services that we knew we had to deliver. And you then have to look to how to fund those if the money is not clearly available from revenue. We've done that in the best way we can. Nobody wants to cut frontline services. Most of the growth has been in health and education. And we want to continue services at a level while reducing back office numbers and looking at how we spend money as best we can, sir. But reprofiling will always be a part of that where relevant. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. The words, I am sure it was considered. Surely the Treasury Minister can confirm whether she is aware that the Council of Ministers did consider reprofiling government spend, and if that is something that she is not aware of, why is that the case? Thank you, sir.
So, yes, of course, we talked about reprofiling. Reprofiling happens in appropriate places, but the Deputy is asking me to remember discussions that happened over many months and were very, very wide-ranging. Yes, reprofiling takes place. It takes place with revenue spending. It takes place with capital spending. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that, but yes, we have looked to reprofile. Thank you.
Dr. Renner, final supplementary.
Yes, sir. At a public meeting recently, when she came under pressure from public criticism of the budget, the Minister told the audience that the budget wasn't her budget. Can she confirm whether she fully and unequivocally supports all the growth bids, health, education, etc., that made it into the budget, and that therefore those bits at least are hers?
Minister.
Sir, I think what I was trying to do on that occasion, I don't think the Deputy was actually present, was explain that this is a Council of Ministers budget. The law changed in 2019. It's not a recent change. I believe it changed going back to 2019, where the budget became the responsibility of the Council of Ministers, and it is lodged by the Council of Ministers and not by the Treasury Minister. That was the point I was trying to make, and the reporting of that has been slightly different. Yes, I support the budget. The Council of Ministers approved the budget as it is lodged, and I support it completely. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Andrews will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise what consideration, if any, has been given to introducing Technical Efficiencies Programme, and if none, could he specify what programmes, such as the adoption of new technologies, are currently in place to ensure that the government maximises outputs whilst reducing their inputs, and if no programmes are in place, explain why not?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'm happy to confirm that the government have a number of programmes that will save money through the application of technology. These programmes are part of this Council of Ministers' drive to curb the growth in the public service, and they're being implemented alongside the recruitment restrictions and the reduction in use of consultancy. For example, the Transform programme in the Employment, Social Security and Housing Department will introduce a new IT platform to replace the current NESI benefits management system. It will reduce staff costs and other expenditure by at least £950,000 a year once the programme is complete in 2028. The application of technology, including artificial intelligence, will be crucial to reducing the unsustainable growth in our public service. And I hope that States members will join the government in February when we will be presented with a blueprint, a proposal for further savings moving forward, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. The Chief Minister mentioned a number of programmes. Would it not be more feasible, sir, if the Chief Minister could bring forward
one overall programme of that which involves technical efficiencies, where we can monitor the level of input across time and also the changes to outputs within the public sector. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Having a one plan fix all is a wonderful ideology, but in practice it's much more complex than that. That's why we have chosen to introduce programmes relevant to the departments with which they refer. For example, the Transform programme is a good idea. Nevertheless, I understand where the Deputy is coming from, sir. I want to reassure members that this government is doing everything it can to drive further efficiencies, and that technology will be at the forefront of this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 5, Deputy Joan will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Joan.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what discussions, if any, he has had with the Council of Ministers regarding Amendment 32 to the proposed budget and its potential impact upon the Environment Department's budget, and whether any proposals were considered to reinstate the reductions to that budget?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the Council of Ministers have discussed all budget amendments, as I'm sure the Deputy would expect, including Amendment 32. However, funding department budgets from the Strategic Reserve is not an option supported by the Treasury for the reasons set out in the government plan, and I'm sure the Deputy will understand. Whilst the department's work will be constrained by the proposed reductions in the budget, I accept that I and my department must take proportionate cuts along with all other departments to achieve our government's future objectives. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Could the Minister advise if any assessment has been made of the long-term economic, health and environmental costs related to these cuts?
Minister.
So I'm not aware of any long-term project work which has looked to the future to see what the overall of these reductions might be. I would expect that next year the new Environment Minister, whoever that is, will fight hard to increase budgets. So looking long-term can identify deficiencies, if you like, in areas which are going to struggle. But it's every year for the Minister of the day to come forward and make a growth bid and hope that it will be accepted.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister said he will accept proportionate cuts. Does he consider the proposed savings to his department proportionate with the other departments he mentioned, or does he consider his department is being more heavily affected than others in the context of the savings that the Amendment 32 is looking to return back to him?
Minister.
Well, sir, cuts are allocated proportionately across the Council of Ministers. But I accept that my department's not considered to be a frontline department, therefore it doesn't enjoy some protections that others do. And the other thing which is very significant in this instance is that my department, probably more than others, relies on the income from fees and charges to balance the books over the course of any 12-month period. It won't be a surprise to the Deputy in particular, sir, that our income from planning applications over the last 2-3 years, certainly this year, the shortfall in expected income from that revenue source is somewhere between 800,000 and £1 million. That's a significant amount of shortfall. So that's something we can't plan for. I would certainly say in the next government, I think somebody should look at the way that the Environment and Regulatory Department is funded, because how you can plan ahead where you have a circumstance where the construction industry gets into challenging times and you could receive less income that you cannot plan for is a very, very difficult way to try to balance your budget when you're employing a significant number of staff.
Supplementary. Betty Braniff.
Thank you, sir. When the Council of Ministers proposed that the Minister's budget should be cut, did they identify any activities or functions of the department that they felt were either overstaffed, flabby, or in other ways meriting of a cut?
Minister.
No, sir, I don't recollect that any minister came up to me and said that parts of my department were particularly flabby. And certainly that would be a surprise to him if it was, I would think, because over the last few years my department's not seen a great amount of growth, money's coming in, and some of the projects we undertake on a regular annual basis now have received similar funding within the department, if you like, for a number of years. And we have a number of areas where we'd like to do better. We'd like to do more. But as a government, we've decided we're convinced that we want to, as far as possible, not add to the cost of living increase. We've restricted our fees and charges to nothing more than 2.5% increase. That's really good on one hand. On the other hand, where you're trying to do more, to regulate more with the same number of staff, no new employees, and a really restricted income from fees and charges, that is a challenge.
Supplementary?
So does the Minister agree that it's a bit of a nonsense to talk about efficiency savings when there aren't any clearly identified efficiencies to be had?
Minister.
Well, I guess we could call them efficiency savings, we could call them all sorts of other savings if you like, but this government are committed to reducing government expenditure where they can. It's a challenge for all of us. Every department is facing some efficiencies, if you like, if that's the word you want to choose to use, but it's incumbent upon ministers to go away and look at their resources, what they have available, the work they have to do, but I don't think any of us would deny the fact that trying to do more with less is a challenge.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain what particular outcomes are affected by reductions to his department's budget?
Minister.
So there will be challenges across the whole department. Certainly in this current year, we have, as I've just said to Deputy Curtis, received a lot less income from planning applications than we expected, and in order to make the books balance, we've given up some vacancies that we very much would like to have filled, but those staff weren't in place. We've given up those vacancies. I've previously listed the areas that we might see some reduction in services over the next 18 months if the efficiencies are accepted, and they're quite numerous. An example would be for Land Resource Management Department at Howard Davis Farm is responsible for 60 kilometres of footpath maintenance around the island. The budget for that work hasn't really changed in 15, 20 years. We're having to look at ways we can do it more efficiently, more cheaply, but we're at the point where I fear that if we can't find a little bit more for that area of work, our footpath network will seriously suffer. It's one of the great selling points for the island, the footpath network around our coast. We've got to maintain it, so that's something I'm going to have to look at. We know the Met Office is under pressure every year for income because we provide services. There's any number of things. Ones that sort of do worry me a little bit are the multilateral environmental agreements, where we have a number of these international agreements with other countries to monitor and study environmental matters, and we're obligated to do that work with them. And this is particularly the sort of work where I feel we may have to cut back on.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for his response. It certainly raises a number of concerns. I wonder, does he currently have any other means by which he could recover the department shortfall in order to deliver on some of those pieces of work or programmes that he's just talked about?
Minister.
Off the top of my head, sir, there's two major income streams for the department. One comes from the Treasury Minister and the other one comes from fees and charges, as I've said. But the government I'm part of are committed to not increasing fees and charges by more than 2.5%. We're not going to introduce any new charges. As a minister for a department that relies on fees and charges for a lot of its income, that is a real challenge, and I can't say off the top of my head how we might do better. But I would point to the economic minister and say that in certain parts of the rural support scheme, for example, we're looking to work with private money as well as government money to facilitate that really good scheme can work even better. There may be some areas in the Environment Department where we can look to work with outside agencies, and that's certainly something I would be very keen to look at.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. May I raise the defo on Deputy 7?
Defo is raised. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm how much of his departmental expenditure is going towards schemes where subsidies are given to firms and households? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of any areas of my Environment Department budget where subsidies are given. Certainly, I'm conscious that I work very closely with the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development in supporting the rural economy. That's one funding stream. There may be others, but I can't think where subsidies to rural households come from my budget. The only other one, of course, which is quite a clear one, that's sort of under my control, which is the Climate Emergency Fund, which allows money to be granted for the installation of electric heating, flow boilers, and that type of thing. Thank you.
Supplementary. Deputy.
So the Minister stood up a moment ago and read out a list of what he thinks all the negative consequences might be of, let's call it what it is, of these cuts that he is putting forward in this year's budget. Could the Minister explain why he agreed to accept these cuts? Because I think we agree they're not efficiency savings. It doesn't make the department more efficient. If he is fully aware both of the potential negative consequences, but also of the strength of public feeling that this has stirred up in the dozens of emails that all members have been receiving about these cuts to the environment budget.
Minister.
So the Deputy used the word cuts on used it a number of times during that question, and while you might look upon them as cuts, and I'm sure they will be reported in the media as cuts, I don't see it as quite in that way. It is efficiency, if you like. We've decided we're going to run the department with less employees. We very much hope we're going to be able to achieve very much the same sort of output with less income. That is a challenge. And we can argue all day whether it's efficiencies, whether it's cuts, what you like. But we have resources, we have income, and we're going to use that to the best way we can. I can't remember the final part of the Deputy's question.
Sir, in general elections, especially in senatorial elections, there has historically usually been one senior member of government who's been thrown under the bus by ministerial colleagues. Often that's an environment minister, or it's been a transport minister, but I look across at the Constable of St John's and think how he's got one of the safest seats in the island. So I asked the minister, does he think in signing up to these so-called efficiency savings that perhaps he is being thrown under the bus by his ministerial colleagues, and does he hope that actually Assembly members will support the amendment brought forward by the Environment and Housing Scrutiny Panel to actually get the money back in the budget that maybe he should have fought harder to get in the first place?
Minister.
So I do fight my corner where I can, but I'm part of a team. And as I said early on, I accepted that every part of government is taking some efficiencies and less money. When it comes to being thrown under the bus, the infrastructure minister has done a great job of buses in the last 2 years. There's a lot more of them, and the chances of me finding myself stood in the road in front of one is far more likely than it was in previous governments. This is a tricky one. It's a little bit like everybody wants to support organic growing, but when it comes down to efficiencies and money, organic growing suffers when households have less disposable income because it's not the cheapest. Everybody supports the environment, and I try my very best to promote it as much as we can. We all do, because we live in a wonderful place where the environment is fantastic. But when you sit down around a table where people are arguing for more money for healthcare, arguing for more money for maybe additional footpath work is a very, very difficult argument to make. And I can't look people in the eye and say, I'm going to prioritise certain parts of the Environment Department over something that the Health Minister might be promoting, which is for the benefit of everybody on the island. It's a really, really difficult one to call. I wish I had more funds. I fight as hard as I can for my funds. Having said that, I'm part of a government which is trying to deliver better things for everybody on the island, and I have to accept my responsibility as part of that team.
Deputy Chair, a follow-up supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Thank the Minister for his answers. But did the Minister assess whether these reductions would jeopardise Jersey's obligations under UK-EU related regulations, especially amid looming Brexit reset-related legislative alignment requiring work from the Environment Department, and this would ultimately affect Jersey's economy?
Minister.
Sir, I am absolutely aware of the challenges for the island that are posed by the EU-UK reset. The work on sanitary and phytosanitary falls pretty much directly under my department's control. And while I don't think that work is going to be affected in this coming year, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, and I've told council ministers this on a number of occasions, there will be a considerable amount of law drafting and law officer work input that will be required to bring our Jersey legislation up to speed with the EU in order for us to comply with SPS requirements of the EU reset. We're all aware of that. It's a challenge we will have to face, and we'll have to work out how we do that when the size of that challenge is known in more detail.
Thank you, Minister. Question 6, Deputy Tadier will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise the total amount spent by Jersey Heritage on the promotion of Gerrier per year and detail how many staff are involved directly in this provision?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the total forecast spend for 2025 is £153,812. This cost contributes to the cost of 2 permanent staff, both of which are less than full-time, plus 80% of the salary for a Gerrier teacher of adults. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Can the thank the Minister for that answer, which is remarkably useful. And could he advise perhaps about the relationship between the 2 permanent staff and the staff member who is employed at 80%? Clarify whether they are all employed on island, and what the overlap is, he thinks, between the Gerrier teaching service, which is not in his department, and the Gerrier work that is performed by these staff, sir.
Minister.
Sir, there is a lot in there, so I doubt I'll be able to cover all of it, sir, because I won't have all the information to hand. But, so the 2 full-time staff who I've referenced do not teach. One focuses on the corpus in the language of the Gerrier strategy and does, alongside the corpus work, translations and dictionary, grammar and linguistic research and so on. The other post is focused primarily around use, and both of them cover the element of language which we refer to as status and the status of the language. Language acquisition, in the main, is left to the Gerrier teachers with the Gerrier teaching service. However, one adult teacher does work via Jersey Heritage, but is classed as a consultant, which means that £12,250 of their salary is paid by SIPES, but because of consultancy rulings at the department, not all of it. So, thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I think this is picking up slightly on one of Deputy Tadier's points, but could the Minister explain the coordination that may or may not occur between the staff employed by Jersey Heritage and the staff who have recently been assigned to the function of arts, culture and heritage in the education department as the teaching Gerrier function, which now falls under the ACH definition? Could you explain if there's any actual coordination between those 2 functions?
Minister.
So that is a very operational question, and as these operations actually occur outside of my department and they occur in the Children and Young Persons Education Skills Department, it is difficult for me to comment. What I would say is that we are working with the Education Department to look at the potential for more clearly kind of ring fencing, not in financial terms, but in operational terms, the teaching of Gerrier as being part of the Education Department's work, and the work outside of that, around the strategy, around the corpus, perhaps moving more formally into the Economy Department, where we can focus on developing the strategy.
Thanks.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I think the relevance of this question is because potentially of a budget amendment that's coming up where we will be discussing about the definition of arts, culture and heritage. The reason why it would be interesting to know if there's coordination between the two is because the government has assigned the teaching of Gérier from the education department, in the education department, to as part of the arts, culture and heritage budget. But I think if I understood the minister's answer correctly, there isn't actually much oversight from him in that. Can you confirm if that is the case and think whether say whether he thinks that is a desirable state of affairs?
There is, from an operational perspective, not enormous amounts of oversight from me because it is work taking part in another department. The Gérier budget has always remained in the education department. However, myself as Minister for Economic Development, I have championed Gérier clearly over the last 3.5 years. I was delighted to promote the Gérier strategy 22 to 25 and to encourage its work and effectively to sign off on that strategy. So again, this brings that split between the departments down to the strategic work about the status of the language and the understanding of the language, research into language, perhaps would be a better fit in the department for which I am Minister, whereas the pure teaching side of it resting in the education, because the teachers do take, engage in the curriculum, and they will teach geography in Gérier, for instance, in particular classes and things like this. So there is a need for them. There is potentially can be seen that there's a need for them to be linked directly to the education department.
Final supplementary, Dr. Sergio.
Yes, sir. I did ask it in my other question, but I appreciate there were multiple questions. Could the Minister confirm whether the language acquisition part-time member of staff at Jersey Heritage, who is classified as a consultant, lives on the island?
Minister.
So, no, it is my understanding that the teacher doesn't live on, the teacher that Deputy Tadier is referring to doesn't live on the island and teaches online. And I think that shows, I myself have actually engaged in lessons from this teacher and can testify to just how good this teacher is, and their understanding of Gérier and Norman languages is extensive. And I think it is right that in this day and age that when someone with such expertise leaves the island for their own reasons, that we are able to still tap into that expertise, because there are not many people with the experience in Gérier that this teacher has. And so to say we're not using them because they live off island would, in my view, be inappropriate. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Question 7, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. In relation to her correspondence with the actuary regarding the impact of cuts to the state's grant in relation to the Social Security Fund, will the Minister explain why she did not take up the actuary's offer to update the best estimate assumptions from 2021 so as to properly inform the debate on the proposed budget?
Minister.
So just to clarify that the Deputy is referring to the actuary's offer to provide best estimate assumptions for investment returns. Can I just clarify that from the Deputy? It's not clear from the question.
Yes.
Yes, so it was the assumptions around investment returns to the fund.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I am, of course, interested in the actuary's view on their best estimate assumptions for the investment returns for the fund into the future, and I have asked officers to ensure that that is in the scope for the additional piece of work that they will be doing at the beginning of next year.
Supplementary.
So I'm not sure that's answered the question. I asked why she hasn't done it.
Minister.
So I have made the request to go back to the initial question in order to inform the debate on the proposed change. It is important that we don't change too many assumptions. That's why we looked at previous assumptions so that we could see the impact of the change that we are intending to make. It will be important for future decisions to have a look, and I agree that it will be useful to get the actuary's advice on best estimate assumptions for investment returns. But for this budget, what's important is we see that the difference that the action that we're taking will make.
Deputy Balash.
May I put the question in a slightly different way? Does the Minister not accept that it would have been helpful to members of the Assembly to know the actuaries' views on the investment income assumption before the debate on the budget?
Minister.
Sir, the states members have forecasts against 3 possible investment returns. Those are sensible forecasts, and I don't think requesting additional work from the actuaries at this point in time would have been good value for money.
Supplementary?
Well, I'm not sure the Minister has answered my question. So would it not be helpful to members of the Assembly to have that information before the debate?
Minister.
So we're dealing with forecasts here. We have a range of possible investment forecasts that have been given to states members so that they can see possible outcomes for the fund. The fund has performed well in recent years and over the longer term, and those forecasts are based on previous forecasts as well. It was important that we keep those things constant.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has said this is information she will seek in future, but will she explain why she didn't immediately take up an offer? So when an expert offers you their opportunity for advice, often a good thing to do is to take their hand and shake it and take the advice as soon as you can. Why did she not respond quickly to the actuaries and say, we would like this further information you are offering to perform?
Minister.
Sir, I have confidence in the advice that we have received from our investment advisors and from Treasury. The information that the deputies are referring to is useful information for longer term decisions when we're seeking to make longer term changes, less useful for this short term measure that we're proposing in this budget.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister confirm that her assessment of changing the grant to the tunes of tens of millions of pounds every year for 4 years is a minor short-term adjustment, notwithstanding the scale of the fund?
Minister.
Sir, it's not a minor adjustment. It's an adjustment that's very important to this island to ensure that we can put money into healthcare and into the things that we need to now. When we look at the longer term changes that may or may not be made into the Social Security Fund, I will ensure, as I have promised this Assembly, that we have all of the information from the actuaries, and I will ensure that this information is included in that scope. And I've already requested that that be done.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I think these are some very unsatisfactory answers. The Minister says she will seek this advice in the future. She says that it will be useful for longer term decisions. But the context for this is this letter was produced as a rabbit from the hat in a scrutiny hearing when the Minister was under pressure to explain how she could justify taking money from the Social Security grant. Here was a letter that said that the money could be afforded. When that letter was examined, it showed that the actuaries had said, well, you've given us some assumptions. We will offer to judge whether those assumptions are good enough. The Minister has been under pressure now for 2 months to take the actuaries up on that advice and has declined to do so. Why is the Minister not relentless in her determination to find out whether the Social Security Fund could do without the grant, rather than ducking and weaving to avoid getting advice that might clarify the matter?
Minister.
Sir, I have sought advice from our investment advisors and our advisors in Treasury. I have requested that the information that is included within the question is within the scope of the work that will be undertaken early next year.
Thank you, Minister. We now move on to questions without notice. And the first period of questions is for the Minister of the Environment. And the first question is from Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister update the Assembly on the work undertaken to date by the Tree Advisory Board and confirm the timeline they have been given to develop proposals for improved tree protection, as referred to in his response to my question during the July oral questions without notice?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And the Deputy's question is a good one at this particular time, because only last week I was given the final list, I think, of members who are going to be part of that board, terms of reference and how they're going to set about their work. I believe the first meeting will be called very early in the new year, and following that I would very much hope that we will start to make some significant progress on trees in general. That's tree planting the right trees in the right place, but also very importantly work on the protection of trees, which is still a subject which I want to tackle. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, could the Minister confirm whether the planned work in this area to enhance and protect Jersey's tree stock will be affected by the proposed budget cuts or efficiencies, and if so, in what ways?
Minister.
At the moment, sir, I can't think that that work would be affected by budget cuts. Many of the people on that advisory board are non-government, working across the island in the countryside, from the National Trust, the Farmers Union, to the Royal Jersey Agricultural Horticultural Association. People of that kind will be represented on this board. We do have monies allocated. A lot of the initial work has been done. It's now a question of getting on and having the meetings and reaching some interesting and important conclusions as to how we move forward. But I don't at the moment see the work being compromised by budget cuts.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister intending to make any changes to the current system whereby planning applications that are refused by the Planning Committee are reviewed by an external planning inspector prior to the Minister himself being the final arbiter? I ask, sir, in particular regard to the recent overturns of the Planning Committee decisions on St Joseph's Care Home and the conversion at Seymour House. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, the Deputy asked the question as to whether I propose or making any proposals to change the process that he outlined there, and I can say to the Deputy no, that I don't think that's necessary. What happened in the particular case that he cited, as he will know, is that the application went in. There was a recommendation from officers to refuse. It went to the Planning Committee, and I believe the Planning Committee voted 4-2 to overturn that opposite decision and refuse. To refuse the application. Sorry, I may have got myself confused here. And then it went to appeal, and the independent planning inspector from the UK came over and wrote me a lengthy consultation paper with a recommendation at the end, and that was a recommendation which I was minded to agree with. Much of the discussion on this particular application was around the definition of overdevelopment, and I was in a position to agree with the independent inspector that the proposals did not amount to overdevelopment to the point where the application needed to be refused.
Supplementary? It's Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister set out the schedule for implementing the marine protected areas, both the areas that the states voted to protect and the areas that were designated for further research?
Minister.
So it's my intention in the very near future to meet with officers. I had hoped to have done it by now, but we've still got some final work to do before I make those decisions. As the Deputy will know, a certain area was proposed to the Assembly. When it came to the Assembly, I went away and asked for further research to be done in other areas. That research has been done. I've had further discussions with both sides of the argument as to how we move forward from there. We have identified some areas which were originally protected, which we wonder whether they might be protected in the future because there's nothing really worthwhile to protect. And finally, sir, I have only last week been told that the economic assessment which we've done, so we can have a good view of how these changes will affect those that rely on these areas for their income from dredging and trawling. That was important work. That work has only just been validated and verified by the Scottish Government. We thought it was important to get it looked at from outside of the island to make sure we got our numbers right. I'm assured now that we have got our numbers right, so in the very near future I will sit down with officers to make some final determinations and try to find a way through the marine protected areas final designations, which is as I'm sure the Deputy will know only too well, a real challenge.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I wonder if I could push the Minister a little bit. Is the Minister considering delaying the implementation of any of the marine protected areas? And does he appreciate the risk that areas that the longer areas are not protected, the greater the risk that those areas will be fished out aggressively before they get protection, therefore rendering the whole purpose of protection irrelevant?
Minister.
The Deputy makes some very good and valid points, sir. And fishing out areas is something that I do not want to happen on my watch. I've been very clear about that. I'm conscious that we have probably exported twice the number of scallops in 2025 that we have done in any other previous year. And I'm very conscious that we must not overfish the stock. We're doing work with Bangor University in the very near future so that sometime during next year we will know what the sustainable catch limits are for this, the stock of scallops. And it's really important that we use management, however that is, management measures to make sure that we have a properly sustainable scallop fishery for the future and for fishermen to make a living from. Having said that, sir, I am sure the Deputy will appreciate there are a number of issues that I need to consider. And as I said, the economic effect of these changes and closures is one. It's not just the Jersey fleet. There are a large number of French vessels which are also affected by these changes. And the Minister will know only too well that there's pressure from France, Normandy, Brittany specifically about these closures. But I will come to a conclusion and I will make a decision. And it may well be that I will have to look at all angles, but at the moment I'm not going to commit to anything until I've seen all the data and evidence in front of me.
Sir, can I, as a point of order, just raise the question I asked was whether the Minister was considering delaying. Is he considering delaying?
Yes. Honourable question. Did you respond to that?
I thought I'd sort of answered that, sir, and my answer will be that while I'm not considering delaying at the moment, it may be something which I may have to consider, but it will be part of a large number of really important considerations that I will have to make before I come up with a final answer in the very near future.
Thank you, sir. The President of the United States has just published the United States National Security Strategy. Page 14, it says, we reject the disastrous climate change and net zero ideologies that have so greatly harmed Europe, threaten the United States, and subsidize our adversaries. With this and world events in mind, will the Minister be reviewing some of his net zero policies?
Minister.
Well, sir, I do my best to keep up with what's happening around the globe and documents and publications which are important to my department, but I'm not aware of the particular United States document that the Deputy, the Constable refers to. He does, however, raise a very interesting question, and there's no doubt that there is significant pressure on certain climate policies which are coming down the line, not just from the United States, but from inside Europe, from inside the UK, and closer to home in Jersey itself, where we have people who challenge me regularly. But there's no doubt in my mind, sir, that human behaviour is affecting the way our climate behaves, and you've only got to look at sea temperatures if you want to find evidence of that, and how the species, the fish, the crustacea that exist in our territorial waters are changed dramatically over the last few years to see that this is actually happening. And I'm not going to get into a detailed discussion whether the President of the United States is correct on one hand and I might be wrong on the other, or vice versa. But there's no doubt in my mind, sir, that we are affecting the way our climate behaves, and it would be responsible for us to take some action to do what we can to reverse that.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his reply. Precise and concise. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has lodged the Animal Welfare Law, which, if approved, would enable wide order-making powers that could include the requirement to obtain a licence prior to owning livestock. If the law is adopted, does he intend to use those order-making powers to bring in the licensing of livestock? And if so, what consideration has he been given to the impact on the rights and liberties of islanders?
Minister.
So I would have to consider exactly what the Deputy said very carefully. Everybody should be entitled to do a certain number of things, but I think we also need to be responsible. And when I hear the word livestock, it doesn't immediately jump to mind that that would be meaning dogs or cats or animals in that nature. It may well be that in the future we need to make sure that people who are responsible for flocks of sheep or herds of cattle are sufficiently qualified. I'm aware, for example, that if you want to work in the oyster and shellfish business industry in France, that you need to have certain qualifications to be able to do that, which is not a bad thing at all. But I would need to look more closely at the detail that the Deputy mentioned, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. And by livestock, I do mean that of animals such as pigs, sheep, cows, but it is the management of livestock such as that is one of the humans' most ancient traits that we have performed. So does he not consider that actually perhaps licensing of this element of human life may be a step too far?
Minister.
Well, sir, the law that I will come to the Assembly with after the New Year is about animal welfare, and that's the important. This is what, it does what it says on the tin, and this is about the welfare of animals, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that if people are looking after numbers of animals, whether that's pigs or sheep or goats, cattle, that they're doing it properly. And I am conscious that we have very, very many good-minded people who want to look after their animals properly, but very occasionally we may come across one who doesn't look after them quite so well, and I think it's important that we have some rules in place to make sure that animals are properly looked after.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister agree that despite the words of the President of the United States, many of the actions being taken to decarbonise Jersey, including decarbonising home heating and transport, are effectively in the category of no regrets and will improve air quality, increase health and increase the quality of our housing stock, and that therefore the carbon neutral roadmap remains as relevant as ever?
Absolutely, sir.
Supplementary?
I think so. That'll leave it.
Are there any further questions for this Minister? Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has just published changes to the revised space standards, which, whilst increasing the minimum of a one-bed, one-person unit to 43 square metres, it reduces the bedroom size for those from 11.5 to 8 metres squared, and he notes that as the key change in his report. Will the Minister advise what work he did to understand the implications of long-term living in an 8 square metre bedroom as the principal bedroom of a house?
You have 30 seconds, Minister.
Sir, the Deputy will know only too well that this is guidance. It's a minimum size. It's not statutory. Every bedroom will not have to be built to the size that he spoke of. But what I will say in a very short period of time is I visited a large number of flats, one bed, one person, one bed, two person flats from the old regime, from the new regime, And I was aware we have very recently increased the size of one-person, one-bed flats by 23%. The only reason for offering a reduction in the bedroom size would be to increase space in the rest of the flats, because we're conscious very much of working from home and things like that. But the main reason that I didn't go down the road of Deputy Coles's proposition was that I thought that it's really important that people still have the choice to be able to buy a one-bed, one-person flat, or a
time to an end, Minister.
One-bed, two-person flat.
Thank you, Minister. The next period of questions is for the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Iyer.
Thank you, sir. With the UK attempting to broker a deal with the EU to release as much as 100 billion euros of frozen assets for Ukraine's war effort, has the Minister changed his stance on this matter, or is he maintaining the position of Belgium? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
I never knowingly maintain the position of Belgium, sir. We must be careful not to confuse state assets with private individuals' assets. The assets that are frozen in Jersey under the relevant legislation are private assets, not state assets. There is, of course, an ongoing international conversation about rebuilding of Ukraine, and whether some, not only the state-held or frozen assets, but the privately held assets might be used in that regard. My view is that we would follow the international approach.
Supplementary?
On that matter, sir, has the Minister been approached by the UK government in regard to this matter?
Minister.
Not approach, so it's rather often the other way round. I raise it in meetings with ministers because it's important that we will be aligned with the UK and the international approach.
Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister has recently lodged an amendment to the draft Register of Names and addresses Jersey law, which seeks to resolve issues with the implementation of data sharing with credit reference agencies. Will the Minister for External Relations advise what impact this will have on his office's timeline for working with such agencies to see the clear flow of data?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. It is, the Deputy is right, it's the next step in what seems to be a far too tortuous process to get the information exchanged. So that decision is a decision that the Assembly will take. I don't think it's slated for debate until the new year. That will then require technical adjustments to the government system. That may not be as straightforward or as timely as we in my department might like, because of the work programme of, there is a special name for it, sir, but I keep forgetting it. Let's just call them the techie people within government who have a work programme. We make the case that this is really important because there are many islanders that feel passionate about not being able to access international provided credit cards, and this is the only way that's going to help with that.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. Is the Minister for External Relations comfortable that this is the last legislative change that should be needed before any good integration work with the CRAs will be possible, and that actually it's a technical limitations on our side that may be the final blocker to the smooth flow of data?
Once this legislation is approved by the Assembly, that is my understanding. However, I'm rather conscious that I think we felt we might have been in this position previously, and the credit reference agencies then raised an issue that they were able to deal with information in a way which was out with the scope of the legislation that we had approved. That's why we need this amendment that the Chief Minister is bringing forward.
Thank you, Renouf.
Yes, so in last year's budget and speaking to the Pillar 2 scrutiny panel, the Minister was adamant that some of core Pillar 2 receipts should be used to start replenishing the Stabilisation Fund. What is his view about the advisability of using these funds for everyday spending now and into the future?
Minister.
So that the Deputy knows that in a coalition government, one can't always get what one would like. I think that the compromise that's been reached in the use of Pillar 2 has meant that we are able to fund the programmes that islanders want when it comes to improving health, comes to trying to get ahead of the curve on prevention methodologies, and it comes in digitising the health service. And I think that that is a fair compromise. It is not a compromise which is sustainable into the medium term, because the stabilisation fund does need to be replenished. The FPP are absolutely clear about that. But I think for this year, which is what this budget actually is, it is a fair compromise.
Supplementary?
So the Minister concedes that this action is not sustainable into the long term. Would he therefore agree that this is representative of the government scraping the barrel, the bottom of the barrel, in terms of trying to find funding to pay for everyday expenditure?
Well, I certainly wouldn't use that description, sir. We've got to be careful that we don't try and characterise some of the changes that the Health Minister and his team are trying to deliver. So, of course, he's got an ongoing pressure of health spend, but at the same time, he is seeking to develop new early intervention methodologies and new digital interactions with islanders. So it's not just perhaps as being characterised as scraping the barrel to keep existing funding. It's trying to do the things which every government has wanted to do for many years. We can argue about whether the funding methodologies for those are correct or not, and we'll do that in the budget. But we shouldn't take our mind off the fact that these will be new services improving healthcare to islanders. My point about not sustainable is that it is not sustainable for us to have no money in the stabilisation fund. That has to be funded into the future.
50 more.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister update the Assembly regarding the position of our aqua and agriculture exports following Brexit?
Minister.
Well, so you know me, I'm quite happy to answer any question thrown at me. I'm not sure whether it really does fall in my departmental remit. I think it falls within the remit of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. But if she is asking me to put my two penneth in, I would describe it as extremely challenging. The Minister for Sustainable Economic Development has done a lot of work on this. The Minister for the Environment has done a lot of work on this. I continue to do so. The only longer or medium-term solution is through the reset with the European Union and the delivery of SBS agreement, which is a veterinary agreement, which will, to a very large extent, remove that bureaucracy. We continue to have conversations with our French counterparts about a more immediate short-term solution, but that's taken over 7 years and we've still got no change there. My concern is that for some fishers and some elements of this industry, even the delivery of an SPS agreement will be too late. And I know that this is the thing that keeps the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development awake at night, if anything does, because it is incomprehensible to me that as an island community, we don't have a fishing industry. So it's very challenging.
Supplementary?
I thank the Minister for taking the time to answer that question and giving his views. So in terms of policy future, what is the Minister's aspirations for the EU customs law? What will he be asking of his counterparts in the UK with regard to that area?
Minister.
In regard to the veterinary agreement, the UK have taken on board all of our asks, which is to be clearly included in the SPS agreement. That will, of course, mean that the Minister for the Environment has to be able to deal with what's referred to as dynamic alignment when it comes to border controls for these products. The Deputy Jeune earlier asked him whether his department was suitably funded. to deal with dynamic alignment, and I think in the conversations that we in external relations have had with them is that they aren't funded at this point, and they will, over the period of time, need to ensure that they've got the resource in place. And that's important because we cannot show that we are a soft option and we are not dynamically aligned. We've given that undertaking to our UK and European partners that we will be, and that we will appropriately resource it.
Any further questions for this Minister? Deputy Renner, then Deputy Chair. Mr. Renner.
Yes, following on from that, perhaps on the subject of the EU-UK reset negotiations, what are the pressure points for Jersey in these renegotiations? Where are we under pressure to agree to things that we might not want to agree?
Minister.
In these negotiations, I can't think that there's anywhere that we're under pressure to agree to things we might not want to agree. I suppose, as ever, the public point would be, do you really want to be dynamically aligned with EU legislation? But those of us who have been involved in these processes for a number of years know that if you want to ease bureaucracy at the border and have an agreement, then you have to concede to compliance with the legislation of the country into which you're then going to export the product. So it's not that we worry about that, it's that we go into it with our eyes open because we believe the benefit far outweighs the difficulty in that regard. When it comes to youth mobility, I think it's fair to say that the Jersey government position is more robust and more fulsome than perhaps the position of the United Kingdom. We're much more aligned with the position of our European counterparts. The question for us that will need to be answered in due course is if one gets to the point of agreeing numbers, where would Jersey's numbers fit in that, and how would there be reciprocal arrangements for islanders?
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I'm just wondering about fishing and whether we might be under pressure to compromise on marine protection in order to gain access to European markets.
Minister.
Well, it's a good question, sir, and it's one that I've obviously considered with both my French, British and European counterparts. The international agreement that those parties have signed up to show that the territorial waters of the signatories should be protected, up to 30% of them, by 2030. It's fair to say that in Jersey, this Assembly has made its will known and given a mandate to the Minister for the Environment. So it's a parliamentary process, so it can only be changed. That direction of travel can only be changed, as I understand it, through another parliamentary process. Members I know feel passionately about marine protection. But our French neighbours, our Brussels counterparts, know that this has to happen by 2030. They see the progress that the Minister has made. He's just had his economic impact assessment. I've not yet seen that. I don't know if the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development has seen it. But these are all important matters that we must continue to consider and communicate with our counterparties in the best interest, ultimately, of fishing communities with whom we share our waters.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. The Minister for Environment has confirmed in a letter to the Scrutiny Panel that there are at least 10 multilateral environmental agreements that, due to the cuts proposed in the 2026 budget, will be reporting and being able to adhere to those agreements will be weakened. And many of those agreements will have impact on trade agreements and the EU-UK trade agreement, the TPA agreement and the resets as well. And what work has the Minister been doing with his counterparts and with the Environment Minister to ensure that these multilateral environment agreements will be able to be met by Jersey?
Minister.
So as a general rule, I don't read letters that are written to other people, so the Deputy is asking me about the contents of a letter that I'm not sure that I'm aware of. If there are concerns, then of course we will work with the Environment Department to ensure that our obligations are complied with.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you. And I suppose that question was related again to trade negotiations and to trade agreements. And the Minister was talking about SPS agreements, but all these multilateral environment agreements also has related to plant and animal health. And the Minister's been clear that the work needs to be funded. It currently is not. Could the Minister explain how this work could be funded in the future if currently the department cannot put a growth
run out of
bid?
time for that. So you don't get to answer that.
So could I just make one point there, because I think the Deputy confused two issues. It is important for the record that the funding that I said wasn't yet in place was for ensuring dynamic alignment. That is different from the treaty obligation work that she was just going to ask me about, but thankfully I no longer need to answer.
Yes, thank you, Minister. We now move to questions for the Chief Minister, and the first question is from Deputy.
Thank you, sir. It's over a month since the FPP produced its report on the budget. On the 11th of November, I asked the Chief Minister which of their 5 recommendations he intended to accept. He said, "I will do so with the greatest of pleasure when we have considered all of them very carefully." The budget debate is upon us. Which of the 5 recommendations does he accept?
Chief Minister.
So I refer to my previous answer. We made no reference to come back with those recommendations for this budget. We studied those recommendations. We listened very carefully to the advice of the Fiscal Policy Panel. And as the Deputy will know, as will other members, we're doing a series of workshops with members and ministers to plan the financial strategy for the future, sir. We will be considering all of the recommendations during this process, sir, and we will be asking the FPP to provide us with more timely advice as we put the plans together.
Supplementary.
So the FPP report was the report on the budget. Is the Chief Minister really saying that after a month of consideration, he still has no view on 5 recommendations? Very simple. It was on 1 page of that document. They were very simple recommendations. They were things like the raid on the Social Security grant not being prudent. Can he explain why he has not a single word to say about the advisability of any of those recommendations before we begin this budget debate?
Yeah, so I stand repeating myself in this assembly. The FPP advice made its position clear on a number of issues, but it also made it provided support for a number of actions we're taking, sir, in relation to savings. We find ourselves in a challenging position here today in question time with Deputy 1 minute chastising a minister for making cuts and then chastising the government for not making more savings. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find the right balance. The FPP advice, we listen to the advice. Okay, we understand their advice in relation to growing expenditure and what we have to do in the future, sir. But I'm not going to be pressured into making knee-jerk reactions to a piece of work, sir, that calls for a long-term approach to resolving the financial challenges we had, sir. I will reiterate, we value the FPP advice, sir. We follow it wherever possible, sir, and that's what we will continue to do. This budget, sir, we're taking a slightly different course because of the circumstances we find ourselves in, sir.
Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister explain how his pilot project fund works and give some examples of projects he's signed off on during his tenure to date?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. The pilot fund is a fund that is used at the discretion of the Chief Ministerial team, sir. I have recently, well, not in the, just to in the recent past, published in a written answer, I believe, all of the schemes that have been supported by the pilot fund. When this government took over, we decided that the scheme would be used to support charitable and community work, sir, and that's where we have directed the money, sir. I haven't got the list in front of me, but two examples will include the Salvation Army, supporting the Salvation Army in their scheme at their headquarters, sir, in Lyndon Place, and support for the homeless, sir, through the Sanctuary Trust. Two examples, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. In comments to Amendment 8 of the budget, as the Chief Minister, I think, has just pointed to, it says that the pilot project fund has been used to maintain the important services of charities, usually to pay for unforeseen events and for short-term alleviation of cash flow problems. Without wishing to downplay any of the very good work done by these charities, would the Chief Minister explain how this fits under the banner of pilot projects? Is it time that fund is rebranded, perhaps, for something else? Is there a more effective way that charities could be helped in the future? Because there may be some who would describe this pot of money as something of a slush fund that can be used in any way, and I'm not sure how that helps with transparency and accountability. Thank you, sir.
Well, so it might have been used as a bit of a slush fund in the past. That's why we've tied this to supporting charitable work. Now, the charities and community organisations receive well-structured funding through the Social Security, the work of the Social Security Minister, and receive, I'm not sure of the amount, I'm looking to her for support, is in excess of £20 million a year of taxpayers' funding goes to support charities. The aim of the pilot fund is to, and you're right, I agree, we inherited as a pilot fund, it's always been referred to as that, maybe it's time to rebrand it, if you like. Charities tend to come to us when they run into sudden unforeseen circumstances that mean they require additional money. And allocating that fund to help charities, not other types of projects, I think has been helpful in providing that additional support that charities need in these challenging economic times. And that's why, at the heart of the comment, we would like to leave some fund in place for unforeseen circumstances. But for at least the first half of next year, it's this government intention to keep the majority of that, all of that funding for use for charity and community organisations.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. In October, I asked the Chief Minister whether he had been briefed on the permanent roadworks licensing scheme due to take place in January 2026, and he said he was due to get a briefing, and to my question that he would thoroughly consider whether the current scheme is overreaching or overly bureaucratic, he said he would. Can he update me on the briefing and any thoughts he's had as to whether the scheme is the right one for Jersey?
I have to say, sir, I haven't received a full briefing to date. However, we've just been too busy with other things. I will speak to the infrastructure minister. I'm wondering if it's on the agenda for the next meeting. I can't remember. We've had several updates for that, but I haven't received the briefing yet. I do apologise.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. The website for roadworks courses and qualifications card still says from January 2026 you'll need a roadworks qualification card to perform any roadworks activity in Jersey. Given the short time frame to this, will the Chief Minister consider that a deferment will be needed so that the decision is not a done deal, full debate can be had, and that those who do operate on roads have certainty as to whether their staff need training before January 2026?
As I understand it, so this is not a great departure from what should be happening now. And in the conversations I have had with the infrastructure minister about this, it's simply because of the increase in unnotified roadworks that have been taking place. So the idea of the scheme is to tighten things up to prevent that work, because when works are done, they might not be road works, they might be construction works that impact upon a road or a public footpath, and when the department is not notified, that causes a lot of knock-on effects. And right now the department has a large programme of improvements, not least to improve the infrastructure so we can get on with building more family homes around the island when there are unnotified works, so that's causing additional problems.
Sir, my question was whether he would consider a deferment, and I don't think he answered that in the supplementary.
Well, not up to me to consider a deferment. I don't think a deferment is necessary from the information I have. That's a matter for the Infrastructure Minister, and we can talk about that, or perhaps he can respond to the Deputy separately.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chief Minister state whether ministers and assistant ministers are bound by collective responsibilities when voting on the budget amendments as per Com's comment?
Minister.
As the Deputy knows, we do not have collective responsibility, the Assembly. This has been withdrawn from ministerial codes, but we do have in our Council of Ministers, and when I say Council of Ministers, I refer to ministers and assistant ministers, we do have a pragmatic approach to dealing with this, and I'll explain it again. We have a government approach, that's when we agree and we support it as a government. We have an agreement to differ, and that is when, on the odd occasion, ministers cannot agree with a course of action, largely due to a manifesto promise, then we allow that, they make their case and they agree to differ, so there are no surprises, sir. And thirdly, in some instances, and there are one or two amendments, I think, in the budget where a free vote will apply, sir. That's the way we approach things. And so far, but the week is young, it's worked very well.
Now I'm a bit more confused, sir. I would like to to the Chief Minister state clearly, does the ministers and assistant ministers have free votes, yes or no? Or it was agreed where they have free votes?
I think I've just answered that question, sir.
Deputy Jen.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister consider that Jersey's current corporate liability laws are sufficient to hold companies to account for serious economic, environmental crimes or corporate negligence resulting in death, serious harm or potential serious harm?
Chief Minister.
My in-depth knowledge of the laws is not great enough to give a detailed response to that, but I do know there are areas following recent events where they need to be reviewed, sir, and that's what we are going to be doing.
Supplementary. Deputy Moore.
I'll withdraw my question, sir.
Deputy Breniff.
Yes, sir. Can the Chief Minister explain why he thinks it is fiscally prudent to use a short-term raid on the Social Security grant to fund long-term spending commitments like health without getting actuarial advice?
Chief Minister.
I refer the Deputy to the answers of Social Security Minister earlier. So we have, thankfully, Social Security Reserve Fund, £2.5 billion, £2.1 billion in 2023, significant investment returns made since then. I won't repeat, well, I will repeat the Deputy. We've had actuarial view, we had a full actuarial review published in 2023. Another one is being commissioned, a letter from the actuaries which the Deputy has seen. We have had expert advice from Treasury officials. We know that the fund, there are decades of future in the fund in relation to what we are proposing. The question is, could the fund in the current circumstances end between, I think it's 2052 and 2066. That's the timescale we're looking at. And quite frankly, while I understand that there has to be a debate about this, and the debate is not about raiding the fund, and that kind of information is irresponsible because it is causing concern among senior citizens. We had to listen to people on the BBC today thinking they're not going to get a pension because of this kind of rhetoric. And that, sir, is irresponsible. So let's get this back to the facts and let's deal with this in a sensible and mature manner, sir. We know we have a big task ahead of us, this Assembly, to get our finances back into the position that we've enjoyed for many decades. The world has changed since then, so we have greater challenges, but I reassure members that this government is doing everything it can, sir, to strike the right balance without decimating our services, especially in health and other essential frontline services.
Supplementary.
Yes, so it's not me that's proposing taking £250 million, which was supposed to be going into the Social Security grant, out of the social security grant. I call that a raid. If the Minister doesn't like the word, the Chief Minister doesn't like the word, I'm sorry. The FPP said quite clearly it was not prudent to launch this raid without a full actuarial review. It was apparent to everyone outside government from early in this year that ministers were going to need to raid the social security grant on a much bigger scale than last year. Why didn't they seek to find out how much the fund could afford to lose before launching their raid? That would that not have been fiscally?
I wonder if I could just ask the Deputy where he saw in the FPP report the use of the word raid, sir, which he just...
No, you've got to answer his questions. You can't answer.
Well,
this is
okay, sir.
Questions.
Well, so the FPP didn't use the word raid, and the recommendation was, I think they said it was not prudent to reduce the grant without an actuarial review, but we felt we had enough information. We had enough information from the actuaries and the expert Treasury officials, given the longevity, the proposed longevity of the fund, sir. Like I say, we value the FPP advice, sir, but it is advice. And under the current circumstances we find ourselves in, we have no doubt we are taking the right action here. And actually, we are not taking money out or away from the fund. We're proposing to put almost £200 million into it, sir. There is a difference. This debate is about should we put 200 million in or should we put 450 million. It's a debate worth having, but let's get the terminology right.
That in effect brings the time for questions to the Chief Minister to an end. One matter in relation to appointment of committee members. Deputy Tadier, do you wish to make a nomination for the vacancy on the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel?
I do, thank you, sir. I would like to nominate Deputy Porée for this position. So I do apologise. I know this would have normally been taken earlier in the order papers, but thank you for moving it this to now, and thank you.
Nomination seconded. Are there any other nominations? Accordingly, I declare Deputy Porée has been appointed as a member of that scrutiny panel. Before we begin public business, the Assembly needs to decide whether to take 4 matters by reducing the minimum lodging period in respect of those matters. The first is the proposed budget government plan 35th amendment lodged by Deputy Moore. Deputy, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow this matter to be debated at this sitting?
Thank you, sir. I do, and if I may briefly thank the Council of Ministers for agreeing in their comments on the amendment to debate this. I hope that the rest of the members of the Assembly will also agree. I'm sure they're looking forward to some robust debate on the topic, and as I outlined in the amendment report, it was inspired by a comment made by the Treasury Minister at the last sitting, which is why it arrived so late. But I do believe it's a very important topic that should be addressed by the Assembly, and I hope that members will support the raising of the lodging period.
Is the proposition seconded? Does anyone wish to speak on the proposition? In that case, those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Thank you. Those against, the proposition is adopted and the lodging period is reduced. The next is the amendment to the 20th amendment to the proposed budget lodged by the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Minister, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 the lodging period be reduced in relation to this matter?
Yes, and cognizant that we've got a very long week ahead. It's simply because with discussions with the chair of the scrutiny panel, we can make this amendment. It will be accepted by the scrutiny panel, and it's a good outcome for us all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Is the proposition seconded? Does anyone wish to speak about the proposition? Those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Thank you. Those against, the proposition is adopted and the lodging period reduced. Next is the Draft Taxation International Tax Compliance Crypto Asset Reporting Framework Regulations lodged by the Minister for External Relations. Minister, do you wish to make the proposition, understanding Order 27, that the lodging period be reduced for this matter to be debated at this sitting?
If I may, sir, and there's a second one as well. I apologise to members that there was a technical error in processing the proposition, and therefore it's just outside of the window. It will have been lodged for 6 weeks by the time we, probably by the time we get to the debate on Wednesday, and so I beg members' indulgence to take it at the end of this sitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is the proposition seconded? Does anyone wish to speak on this proposition? Those who are adopting the proposition kindly show. Thank you very much. Proposition is adopted and the lodging period is reduced. Next is the Draft Taxation Implementation International Tax Compliance Common Reporting Standard Amendment Regulations, lodged by the same Minister. Minister, do you wish to make the same proposition?
If I may, sir, and I refer members to what I said, making the proposition for the earlier one. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is the proposition seconded? Those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show.
We have the appel, please.
The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the proposition has been adopted. 41 votes in favour. 43 votes in favour. No votes contra or abstentions. The next item is the proposed budget government plan lodged by the Council of Ministers. For the purpose of the main debate, the main respondent is the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, though there are a number of different respondents to various amendments listed in the order paper. The Council has indicated its acceptance of the following amendments, and I take them in the order in which they were to be debated. The 9th, 6th, 24th, 10th and 12th. The Council has also indicated its acceptance of the following amendments, provided its amendments to those amendments are adopted. The 3rd, lodged by the Corporate Service Scrutiny Panel, the 19th by Deputy Doublé, and the 20th by the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. Now, Minister for Treasury and Resources, do you wish for the proposition to be read as amended by the amendments which you are accepting, namely the 9th, 6th, 24th, 10th and 12th amendments?
Yes, sir. Sir, on my list I also have the 16th. Has that been as being accepted?
I think there's a difficulty there because if we read the proposition as amended by the 16th, that prevents there a debate on the 7th amendment by Deputy Porée. So for that reason, the proposition cannot be read as amended by that particular amendment.
So yes, if it could be read as amended.
So you're
as you
content
suggest, sir.
for the Deputy Porée? Do you want to say something?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Members will have seen that my amendment is very similar to the amendment from the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. I lodged my amendment before the Scrutiny Panel's amendment, and because of my concerns at the prospect of charges being introduced into our health services. My Reform Jersey colleagues and I have always promoted the principle of a health service free at the point of need for all. For that reason, I want to be vigilant against any move in a direction that can lead to inappropriate charges. With the Health Minister accepting the Scrutiny Panel's amendment, which will see any attempt to introduce charges at A&E come back to the Chamber for a debate, before they can be implemented, I am happy to withdraw my amendment in support of theirs. I will, though, pay close attention to how the Minister further develops this policy and will not hesitate to bring it back to the States Assembly again if the matter is dealt with in a way that is unfavourable and unfair to the public of Jersey and to our reformed Jersey ethos on both areas of non-attendant fee and emergencies fees. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. So the 7th amendment is withdrawn. So that means, Minister, your proposition can be read as amended by the 9th, 6th, 24th, 10th, 12th and 16th amendments as you propose, yes?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Now, there are now 3 other amendments to which I've referred, the 3rd, 19th and 20th amendments, Minister, which you're prepared to accept if the proposers accept the Council's amendments to their amendments. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, sir.
Yes. Deputy Miles, as Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, are you accepting the Council's amendment to your 3rd amendment?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. Deputy Doublé, are you accepting the Council's amendment to your 19th amendment?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Catherine Curtis, as Chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, are the panel accepting the Council's amendment to your 20th amendment?
Yes, sir, thank you.
So, having heard that news, Minister, do you wish your proposition to be read as also amended by the 3rd, 19th and 20th amendment?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Are members content for the proposition to be read as amended by those amendments? Thank you. Griffia, are you ready to read the proposition? We can all sit back and relax. Griffia.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, A, in accordance with Article 16 of the Public Finances Jersey Law 2019, the law, to approve an amendment to the Government Plan 2025 to 2028, entitled Budget 2025 to 2028, to a reduction in the 2025 head of expenditure grants to states funds, as included in Table 5.1, Revenue Heads of Expenditure of that Government Plan, from £119,821,000 to £69,821,000. B, to receive the Government Plan 2026 to 2029, entitled Budget 2026 to 2029, specified in Article 9.1 of the law, and specifically, 1, to approve the estimate of total state's income to be paid into the Consolidated Fund in 2026, as set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 1 to the report, which is inclusive of the proposed taxation and AMPO duties changes outlined in the Government Plan, in line with Article 9.2a of the law. 2, to refer to the Act dated the 24th of June 2003, in which they approved that no new user pays charges be introduced without any such charge receiving prior in-principle approval by the States Assembly, and accordingly to approve the introduction of 2 new charges to be levied by Health and Care Jersey to promote appropriate use of the emergency department and for repeated non-attendance of outpatient appointments, detailed in the section entitled Departmental Income Sources, as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report. Except that, A, on page 27, for the words bringing forward 2 new fees to be introduced during 2026, there should be substituted the words implementation in 2026 of the planned did not attend fees and the development of detailed proposals that would be presented for approval by the States Assembly for the introduction of fees encouraging the appropriate use of the emergency department. And B, on page 28, for the words both fees will be introduced during 2026 after a period of advanced public communications, there should be substituted the words that did not attend fees will be introduced during 2026 after a period of advanced public communications. However, the proposed emergency department fees will not be introduced until detailed evidence-based proposals, including but not limited to ensuring that free access for genuine emergencies is not compromised and maintaining the safety and well-being of healthcare staff, have been presented to and approved by the States Assembly. 3, to approve the proposed changes to approval for financing borrowing for 2026, as shown in Appendix 2, Summary Table 2 to the report, which may be obtained by the Minister for Treasury and Resources as and when required, in line with Article 9.2c of the law, of up to those revised approval amounts. 4, to approve the transfers from one state's fund to another for 2026 of up to and including the amount set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 3, in line with Article 9(2)(b) of the law. 5. To approve a transfer from the Consolidated Fund to the Stabilisation Fund in 2026 of up to £50 million, subject to a decision of the Minister for Treasury and Resources based on the availability of funds in the Consolidated Fund as at the 31st of December 2025 in excess of the estimates provided in this plan, or from budgeted underspends identified before the 31st of December 2026. 6. To approve a transfer from the Consolidated Fund to the Agricultural Loans Fund in 2026 of up to £5 million, subject to a decision of the Minister for Treasury and Resources based on availability of funds in the Consolidated Fund as at the 31st of December 2025 in excess of estimates provided in this plan, or from budgeted underspends identified before the 31st of December 2026. 7. To approve each major project that is to be started or continued in 2026 and the total cost of each such project and any amendments to the proposed total cost of a major project under a previously approved government plan in line with Articles 9(2)(d), E and F of the law and as is set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 4 to the report. 8. To approve the proposed amount to be appropriated from the Consolidated Fund for 2026 for each head of expenditure, being gross expenditure less estimated income, if any, in line with Articles 9(2)(g), 10(1) and 10(2) of the law, and set out in Appendix 2, Summary Tables 5(1) and 2 of the report, except that in Summary Table 5(1), the expenditure proposal for the Cabinet Office Head of Expenditure shall include the budget for the Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson, totalling £388,000. A separate service area should be created within the Cabinet Office entitled the Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson and reported in the annex to the budget. 9. To approve the estimated income, being estimated gross income less expenditure, that each state's trading operation will pay into its trading fund in 2026, in line with Article 9(2)(h) of the law and set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 6 to the report. 10. To approve the proposed amount to be appropriated from each state's trading operations trading fund for 2026 for each head of expenditure, in line with Article 9(2)(i) of the law and set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 7 to the report. 11. To approve the estimated income and expenditure proposals for the Climate Emergency Fund for 2026, as set out in Appendix 2, Summary Table 8 to the report. 12. To approve, in accordance with Article 9(1) of the law, the Government Plan 2026 to 2029, as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report, except that, A, on page 21, the table entitled Figure 12, Economic Wellbeing Risks, should be renamed Figure 12, Environmental Wellbeing Risks, and a new line entitled Climate Emergency should be inserted as follows. Climate Emergency. The budget includes feasibility funding of £1.9 million for the Shoreline Management Plan to alleviate coastal flooding through the improvements of sea defences. The budget includes proposals to increase fuel excise duty and vehicle emissions duty, with the income transferred to the Climate Emergency Fund to support the implementation of the carbon neutral roadmap. B. On page 36, after the words future budgets, there should be inserted a new paragraph as follows. Stamp duty holiday for right-sizing homes. The government will undertake an investigation to establish a stamp duty holiday for those who are purchasing properties to downsize, alongside a framework to accurately track these transactions. A downsizing transaction will be defined as one that involves those who are selling their current home to purchase a home with fewer bedrooms. The purpose of this stamp duty holiday will be to further incentivise right-sizing to increase the supply of family homes. C. On page 42, immediately after Table 9, there should be inserted the following new paragraph. The budget for a Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson in the Cabinet Office Head of Expenditure, totalling £398,000, has been ring-fenced to ensure that this budget should not be used for any other state's purpose than the Jersey Public Services Ombudsperson, to ensure that this undertaking is incorporated into the work stream of any new government and funded accordingly. D. On page 45, after the words included in Budget 2027, there should be inserted the words, in order to support this, a draft proposal and expenditure for the new Violence Against Women and Girls legislation will be published in advance of April 2026, alongside a progress report of recommendations implemented up to the 1st of May 2026, as part of the 2026 Violence Against Women and Girls Annual Progress Report. E. On page 45, after the words improve the health of islanders, there should be inserted the words, The Minister for Health and Social Services will produce a roadmap for delivering preventative health outcomes through a phased, evidence-led, whole-system approach. The Minister will involve the wider determinants of health ministerial group in developing the roadmap to ensure ministerial accountability for the delivery and outcomes of the roadmap. F. On page 45, after the words "to all 2 to 3-year-olds," there should be inserted a new paragraph as follows. During 2026, the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning will collect, collate and analyse the necessary data to explore the feasibility of provision of free school meals to all non-fee-paying primary schools and additional households, including but not limited to single-parent families and, if feasible, households that would otherwise qualify for income support were they not occupiers of a mortgaged residence, reporting to the Assembly prior to the end of 2026. G. On page 45, after the words "improve the health of islanders," there should be inserted the following new paragraph. During 2026, the Minister for Health and Social Services will publish a women's health strategy which will be informed by the Women's Health and Wellbeing Joint Strategic Needs Assessment 2024. And H. On page 47, after the words "budget for arts, culture and heritage funding will increase in future years with inflation allocations for pay and non-pay," there should be inserted the words "The SIPE's head of expenditure includes funding in the sum of £670,700 for promoting and teaching the language of Gerrier. This will be specifically ring-fenced for 1 year for this purpose, and also further work will develop and renew the Gerrier language strategy, which expires in 2025.
Say that one more time. No, sorry. So, quite seriously, I've just remembered, I have a hospital appointment at 12, but it's only short and I should be back for after lunch, but I may need to leave early, thanks.
I call upon the Minister for Treasury and Resources to propose the budget. Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, today, with my council ministers' colleagues, I present a budget that is rooted in balance and responsibility. As elected representatives, it is our duty to make some tough decisions to find the best overall outcomes for islanders. We as a Council of Ministers have chosen to invest in things that really matter to islanders today. Islanders want a health service that they can trust. They want our most vulnerable children to feel safe, supported and given every chance to thrive. And they want to live in an island where they can see a bright future. Our economy remains fundamentally strong, but the latest economic forecasts did show slightly lower growth than previously expected, and inflation staying higher for longer. This placed more pressure on government finances, just as these conditions affect households. In responding to these pressures, we have looked hard at our choices. Given the ongoing challenges islanders are facing with the cost of living, we have chosen to protect them from the tax rises we have seen in other jurisdictions. Personal tax allowances have been raised again this year by £550 to £21,250 per person. This keeps more money in islanders' pockets, which further reflects the government's mission to help support islanders with the cost of living. Instead of raising taxes, we have stepped back, considered our overall finances and made pragmatic choices, in particular around how much of taxpayers' money we pay into the Social Security Fund. And let me be absolutely clear again. Our Social Security Fund remains in excellent health. Over the budget period, it will receive £184 million from taxation, alongside contributions and strong investment returns. This ensures pensions and contributory benefits remain secure for islanders today and for future generations. With over £2.5 billion in reserves, Jersey's pension system is robust and continues to provide security for today's pensioners and for generations to come. Not everyone will agree with this approach, and that is legitimate. Debate is the foundation of our democracy, and I look forward to what will no doubt be a passionate, but I hope respectful debate. Our reserves remain the cornerstone of Jersey's resilience. We are seeking to rebuild them through prudent strategic decisions, transferring the prior year basis tax debt into the strategic reserve this year and earmarking revenues from Pillar 2 above our prudent base case estimate to further strengthen these reserves. But yes, we all need to do more to increase these essential reserves in the coming years. Much has been said about the growth in the public sector. It is right that we address this. However, there are some risks that are too great to ignore or to leave to future governments to address. A £28 million investment will ensure we can continue to deliver quality healthcare while investing in preventative and digital medicine to help islanders stay healthy and reduce the need for frequent intervention. We will invest £8 million for children's services and £3 million to expand free childcare. We are also investing £7 million into the competitiveness of our financial services industry, which is undeniably the engine of our economy. These are not just numbers, they are real investments in the health, well-being and future of our community where it matters the most. This does not change the fact that our public service has grown significantly in the last few years. The Fiscal Policy Panel have rightly identified that this level of growth is simply not sustainable, and we must confront the reality and take steps to bring spending under control. This budget therefore builds in significant savings, £20 million in 2026 and £29 million in 2027, so that's nearly £50 million in total. These reductions are phased to allow a considered, measured approach to reducing costs and ensuring we protect essential frontline services and avoid the kind of rushed decisions that could cause irreparable damage to the services on which we all rely. Jersey has faced decades of underinvestment in infrastructure. This has to change. We need a shift to longer-term thinking, and this budget sets out the foundations for this. Early next year, we will bring forward proposals to establish a Jersey Capital Investment Fund. This fund will separate spend on our buildings and infrastructure from day-to-day expenditure. This will protect vital capital investment from being diverted to cover operating costs. The programme of capital will be underpinned by a long-term plan, making sure we look after our assets and keep them fit for purpose for this and future generations. In advance of that change, this budget invests in improvements to Fort Regent, delivers new healthcare facilities and upgrades our infrastructure network. In total, more than £1 billion will be invested in Jersey over the next 4 years. This is the last budget of this Assembly. By necessity, it acts as a bridge into the plans of the next Assembly. It is clear that we face a number of challenges that require longer-term thinking, such as the impact of an ageing population, in particular on health, and the impact of climate change. Addressing challenges of this scale requires us to create the environment where we can look beyond the short term and beyond the election cycle. This is why I intend to bring forward proposals to reintroduce multi-year financial planning next year. We must break the annual cycle that has driven unsustainable growth and instead create conditions for long-term discipline and stability. So this is a responsible, forward-looking budget. It invests in islanders and supports businesses and does so without raising taxes. It positions Jersey as a stable, confident jurisdiction ready to navigate uncertainty and seize opportunities. We want our future generations to see a positive outlook in this island. Above all, it lays the groundwork for future assemblies to be able to take the longer-term view that our island needs, to be ready to meet and overcome the challenges that the future will bring. This is our opportunity to build a stronger, fairer and more sustainable Jersey, not just today, but for generations to come. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We now move to the first amendment, which is the fourth amendment lodged by Deputy Balash. I'll ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 2, paragraph A, after the words Government Plan 2025 to 2028, entitled Budget 2025 to 2028, For the words "a reduction in the 2025 head of expenditure grants to states funds as included in Table 5.1 revenue heads of expenditure of that government plan from £119,821,000 to £69,821,000, substitute the words "a reduction in the 2025 head of expenditure grants to states funds as included in Table 5.1 revenue heads of expenditure of that government plan from £119,821,000 to £94,821,000, with a new row inserted in Summary Table 3 to transfer £25 million from the Strategic Reserve Fund to the Consolidated Fund in 2025. Page 2, paragraph B4, after the words Appendix 2, Summary Table 3, in line with Article 9.2b of the law, insert the words, except that in Summary Table 3, the values for the transfer from the Social Security Reserve Fund to the Social Security Fund should be reduced by £24,632,000 in 2026, £25,528,000 in 2027, £26,335,000 in 2028, and £27,141,000 in 2029, with a new row inserted to transfer the following amounts from the Strategic Reserve Fund to the Consolidated Fund: £24,632,000 in 2026, £25,528,000 in 2027, £26,335,000 in 2028, and £27,141,000 in 2029. Page 3, paragraph B8. After the words Appendix 2, Summary Tables 5.1 and 2 of the report, insert the words, except that in Summary Table 5.1, the head of expenditure for grants to states funds should be increased from £63,128,000 to £87,760,000 in 2026, with the state's grant to the Social Security Fund rebased to £75 million before one-off deductions to fund capital and to support the transition towards the living wage. For 2027 to 2029, the £75 million state's grant to the Social Security Fund should be uprated using average earnings.
Deputy Balash.
Sir, although it may not appear so to the Treasury Minister, I do have considerable sympathy for the position in which she finds herself. She has responsibility without power. She has apparent responsibility for the budget and is the lead minister, but the power to settle fiscal matters actually rests with the Council of Ministers. Maybe the minister fought like a wildcat behind cabinet doors for a more responsible budget. Who knows? This is a bad situation from everyone's perspective, and I hope that the next government will put it right, lay the responsibility for the budget and the power to say no with the Treasury Minister, and reintroduce a 3-year budget period as the Minister wants. It's a prerequisite for restoring stability. This amendment, sir, is a compromise. I see no justification for taking any money from the Social Security Reserve without a full report from the government actuary on the implications of doing so. But I recognise that the government is in a bind. It has a black hole in its finances, and somehow that must be filled. We are spending more than we earn. I think that almost everyone, Reform Jersey members perhaps excepted, would admit that we have got into bad habits. We have assumed for too long that there is always a bag of money down the back of the sofa which will bail us out. The Minister for Social Security gave some very unsatisfactory answers to the question from Deputy Renouf, but I think it's worth examining that issue in a little bit more detail. I'm disappointed with her. She has administrative responsibility for the Social Security funds. Why did she not resist the proposal that the state's grant should be so savagely reduced. When the scrutiny panel put that question to her, the answer was that she had had advice from the government actuary that the fund could easily afford this reduction in grant. We asked to see the advice. When it came, it revealed that the government actuary had been given an assumption on which to work, that the investment return on the fund would be as the average earnings increase plus 3% and not 2% as used in the 2021 report. The actuary said that the results and long-term balance were sensitive to the assumed investment return. On the 3rd of November, the panel asked the Minister to take up the actuary's offer to advise on the reasonableness of taking a 1% higher investment yield as an assumption. The Minister replied promptly on the 7th of November, acknowledging the letter and stating, "I am committed to providing helpful information to support the scrutiny process and the budget debate." When the letter from the actuary arrived on the 12th of November, we were astounded to find that there was no reference to the investment return advice. The actuary had not been asked to provide it. We protested to the Minister, who said that the advice on the reasonableness of the investment return would form part of the actuary's one-off review in early 2026. Too late for the budget debate. The panel tried to get the advice directly from the actuary, but the answer was no. It was advising the government, and advice to the panel would involve a conflict of interest. The Minister refused to get the information for us. So a crucial piece of the jigsaw is missing. There are two moving parts to the actuary's analysis. The net inward migration figure is the first part, and the investment return figure is the second part. We know that an average earnings increase plus the 3% assumption and net inward migration of 325 plus indeed appears to lead to no problem with the fund, with the balance increasing. But adding 2%, as has been done in the past, could lead to the fund's exhaustion in 2071. With zero immigration, the fund will be exhausted by 2061. We don't know which earnings assumption is the right one to take. Despite her promise, the Minister has unfortunately not been helpful. One can only assume that she did not want to receive or to risk receiving unfavourable advice from the actuary before this debate. A few weeks ago, the Minister accused me of scaremongering. The fund could afford it, she said, and the temporary reduction in grant unlocked other elements of social spending. The trouble with that argument is that the spending in question is not temporary. It is and creates an enduring revenue liability. What will we do in 2029 when the so-called temporary reduction in the grant comes to an end? Where will the money come from then? £50 million, it's not an insignificant figure. And what will happen to the Social Security Reserve Fund if the reduction in grant is permanent? It is not scaremongering. It is just being realistic. So where does that leave this amendment? The Fiscal Policy Panel described the proposed reduction in the state's grant without detailed advice from the actuary as being, I quote, not prudent. Those are strong words from cautious economists. It seems to me that the Assembly should be more prudent than the government proposes to be. We have a responsibility to hold the government to account and to protect future generations of islanders from rash conduct by ministers. Cutting the state's grant by 25 million for 4 years rather than 50 million seems to me to take account of the government's problems, but to be slightly more prudent. In one sense, the amendment is neutral. It takes money from the strategic reserve instead of the Social Security Reserve Fund. But my hope is that it would not be necessary to take 25 million from the strategic reserve. I hope that the government would use the amendment as an incentive, a nudge, if you like, to reduce spending instead. The government is critical of that suggestion. It states in its comments, ministers cannot support adding another 25 million of unspecified savings to the existing targets for 2026. Savings of this magnitude could not be achieved in that timescale without cuts to essential services. I think that is a really pusillanimous, weak-minded statement, which indicates, regrettably, that the government has not really woken up and smelt the coffee. We are not yet in crisis. I agree with the Minister that our economy is strong. We are not yet in crisis, but we are on the way to a crisis. We are spending far too much. If the government cannot recognise that fact and commit to doing something about it, we really are in serious trouble. This may not ideally be the prudent thing to do, but it is, in my view, a middle course, a compromise. I move the amendment, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Is the amendment seconded? Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this amendment is one of the most significant lodged to the proposed budget in terms of impact to public finances. The strategic reserve is a cornerstone of our fiscal framework. It was established nearly 40 years ago by previous assemblies in recognition that, as a small island economy, we are more vulnerable to economic shocks. Building resilience into our public finances is essential. The Fiscal Policy Panel, our independent economic advisors, have considered what size of reserve is appropriate. Their recommendation was between 30 to 60% of GDP, so a minimum of 2.2 billion. Growing the strategic reserve to this level, while continuing to deliver services and maintain our assets, remains a significant challenge. Removing 125 million from the reserve, as well as reducing investment returns, which are consequential upon that reduction, is clearly moving in entirely the wrong direction. The proposer says he would prefer to grow the strategic reserve, yet offers no alternative plan to reduce spending. He does not have the benefit of the extensive Council of Ministers discussions or the advice of government officials. Despite this, he recommends a 10% reduction to the strategic reserve, contrary to the very clear advice from the Fiscal Policy Panel, reducing its value even more than it is already. And certainly my reading of the Fiscal Policy Panel's report, and many people have commented on it, is that they were much more definitive on the need to grow the strategic reserve than they were on the reduction in the state's grant. They are clear, and have been clear for a long time, that we need to build the strategic reserve. We are trying to do that. Meanwhile, we will invest £184 million from general taxation into the Social Security Fund over the plan. We are not plundering the fund. We are redirecting resources to ensure they are used in the most efficient way for the island. So I would like to emphasise this again to the Assembly. The Social Security Fund is in excellent health. By the end of 2026, it is expected to hold 7 to 8 times its annual expenditure, which is well above the fund's original target of 5 times annual expenditure. This is something we should be proud of. There are not many other similar jurisdictions having such a strong fund underpinning their state pension. We do not want to undermine that strength, and this budget does not do that. We have taken advice from the government actuaries, and this confirms that even with reductions proposed, the fund will continue to be healthy for many years to come. Some members have raised concerns about changes to actuarial assumptions. We all know that past returns don't guarantee future returns at the same level. Those of a pessimistic nature will highlight that they may be lower. Any natural optimist will point out that they may be higher. Our investment advisors account for this uncertainty when reviewing our investment strategies, modelling thousands of scenarios to determine how likely different outcomes are. For the Social Security Reserve Fund, they estimate that the likelihood of the fund achieving 3% above earnings is between 55 and 65%. In other words, this is more likely than not. While it is of course possible to be more prudent, I don't think anyone would consider this to be an imprudent estimate. No member, other than Deputy Balash in respect of the fort and Deputy Miller with her very far-reaching amendment, has tried to reduce the investment identified by the Council of Ministers through amending this budget, or indeed by adopting any of the other FPP amendments. The FPP also said, for example, they don't like formula-based budget setting. Nobody's tried to reduce the 1% for arts, heritage and culture, have they, which the FPP have commented against. It can only be assumed that members share our strongly held view that this investment is needed, and it's needed now. This amendment does not change the investment, it only changes how it's funded. Members have a clear choice: adopt a pragmatic approach that unlocks vital investment without harming the long-term outlook of any of our funds, or reduce our resilience by depleting the strategic reserve when we know we should be growing it. Finally, I would just like to acknowledge the feedback from the Youth Assembly. They considered the budget and emphatically concluded that health is seen as a top priority, with nearly 60% placing it first and over 90% placing it first or second. When asked the question, do you think the government should reduce payments into the Social Security Fund for 4 years to increase spending on services for young people and families, 77% said yes or yes probably, over 3/4 of those asked. We are here to represent all islanders, and that includes listening to our young people. Sir, if adopted, this amendment will damage our financial resilience without delivering meaningful benefit, and I urge members to reject it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Look, I do sympathise, sir, with Deputy Balash. I think there are a number of backbenchers who feel very similar. We have taken a look at this government budget. It is very concerning. There is 52 million being proposed in growth bits, and the partial withholding of the state's grant is allowing the government to increase expenditure, expenditure that we really should not be carrying through this States Assembly, sir. We should be reprofiling government expenditure and maintaining our budgets, and if necessary, reducing government budgets without impacting services, sir. But I must say, sir, as much as I acknowledge that Deputy Balash is absolutely entitled to be bringing forward this amendment, and he has spoken about the plundering of the Social Security Fund, but it is an actual fact, sir, the strategic reserve that is going to be plundered. In excess of 100 million is going to be withdrawn from the fund so the government can spend more money. And I totally disagree with that, sir. I have probably been the most vocal politician about the strategic reserve. It stands at about 17% of gross value added. The Fiscal Policy Panel have made it very clear it should stand somewhere between 30 to 60% of gross value added. However, if we are withdrawing funds from the strategic reserve, that percentage will decrease. That is a big concern of mine. Now, I know there's probably a few members here who are thinking, you know what, it's probably best that we support Deputy Balash and his amendment. In actual fact, sir, I would say it is not the wise thing to do. If we want to be rejecting what the Council of Ministers are doing, we'll have the opportunity towards the end of this budget debate where we can be voting against the final budget as amended, sir. But even when I'm looking at some of these figures here, sir, you're looking at 24, 26, 27 million being withdrawn from the strategic reserve, when in actual fact, when we're looking at the Social Security Reserve Fund, it is growing across the period. However, I do not agree in principle with the decision that the Council of Ministers have come forward with to utilise the Social Security Reserve Fund to provide the Social Security Fund with income to allow the fund to maintain an equilibrium, sir. I don't think that is necessary, sir, when in the first instance, sir, the state's grant should really be reinstated in full without any adjusting of the reserve funds, because it is certainly something that is not sustainable, sir, and I do worry, even if the State Assembly reconstitutes, the way how things are going, public finances are only going to get worse. And the reason for that, sir, is because we've got a Council of Ministers who seem to be making the admission that they are satisfied with the current level of government spending. I'm certainly not, and what I've not really seen is a government bringing forward proposals to reduce government expenditure, because that is what we need to be seeing. We need the consolidated fund to be in a public sector surplus. Instead, it's in a deficit. And all they're doing is they are using the reserves to try and balance things out. That is not fiscally prudent. It is economically illiterate. And I'm very, very concerned that we have a Council of Ministers who are bringing forward these proposals that are ill-considered. Even the Fiscal Policy Panel must be banging their head against the wall, because time and time again their advice is being ignored. And I'm just getting really fed up of it, sir. So I think I've made my point very clear. And I just hope that a few other members will be standing up to say, look, I'm not supporting the budget. And hopefully there'll be about 15 or 16 of us, because it needs to happen.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. I find myself in a difficult position with this amendment, and I want to refer to the way that Deputy Balash has so eloquently set out the process that my panel have attempted to gain information on this. And it's really unfortunate that the Assembly is in the position where we don't actually have all of the information available. I've listened very carefully, and we've had many discussions on scrutiny, and some of my panel members I know feel very strongly about this. and I do have my own concerns, perhaps not as strong as some, but concerns nevertheless. And when thinking about this, I have weighed it up against the wider contents of this budget. And so there are some measures being funded that I feel will have a really positive impact if they are implemented, things that I have advocated for myself, like funding for childcare and preventative health measures and support for families. And I want these social benefits. But again, to refer back to the context that Deputy Balash has set out and the context that has gradually emerged through our scrutiny work and through the questions in this assembly, I still find myself in the position of not having enough information and evidence, and I believe the Assembly as a whole, we don't really have the full evidence to make an informed decision on this. And were I to find myself in this situation with any other proposition, I would consider a reference back, but that's not possible in this instance. So I am going to listen to this debate and bear in mind all of the discussions we've had on scrutiny and weigh those up against the benefits that are within this budget that I know that this move has been made to fund. And I think I could go either way at this point, sir. I may find myself having to abstain because I always like to make my decisions based on sound evidence. And I do believe that we have done everything we could on scrutiny to politely request the evidence that was necessary. And we have simply reached the end of the line in terms of timing and not being able to get that evidence. So very difficult situation, sir. I'll be listening to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Barbara Ward.
Thank you, sir. I think before I start, I need to thank the Chief Minister and colleagues on the Council of Ministers for their understanding and respect of my views, which do differ, on the issue of withholding monies from the state's grant into the Social Security Fund over the following years of 25 to 29. This is about the fourth time that I've stood up and I've spoken about pensions and about how passionate and important our pensions must be protected going forward. In 25, we're looking at 50 million plus 10 million, which was agreed in 24's budget for the living wage. So that's 60 million. 26, 50 million plus the 10 agreed for the living wage, and an extra 17 million, which equals 77 million for 26. 27, another 50 million, 28, 50 million, 29, 50 million. The total is, monies being withheld, sir, is 287 million. Or should I actually say a drawdown according to what the fiscal panel calls it. If you look at page 6, number 3, recommendations. This total reduction has internal effects on the Social Security Fund, as this reduces the percentage of monies that is transferred into the Health Insurance Fund, which, as we know, is in a decline and desperately needs more investment to pay for prescriptions, GP visits, address increases for our community pharmacists and dental provision, and so on. Sir, I can hear some members say, oh, but we've put 184 million going into the fund. But in reality, it should be 471 million. And that, what I can't calculate, sir, is the investment that we've lost. The pension scheme is deemed to be in a very healthy position due to favourable investments. But, sir, for how long? If we are, as an assembly, keep withholding or drawdowning monies that are deemed to pay for pensions, benefits and community provisions over the next 70 years, where does it end? Yes, the pension fund has done very well, but we, the global we, are living in uncertain, volatile, fiscal and unsure economical times. We need to be very cautious or prudent, as recently indicated by Fiscal Policy Panel. From past records, nearly 300 million was withheld between the years of 2020 to 24, with the promise of the then Treasury ministers that the grant would return to its usual formula and be paid in full. These assurances have just not materialised. In fact, withholding of monies has worsened, as we can see. I must ask, where will it all end? From 2020 to 2029, just short of £600 million will have been withheld. But what I'm not able to do is quantify how much extra fund we will have lost over those 9 years from the lack of investment on that 600 million. It's probably going to be bruising £1 billion. But that's a guess, I'm not an accountant. When the actuaries conducted their reviews in 21-23, were they asked to look at the grant formula? And if not, sir, why not? The actuaries need to be asked that when they do their next actuarial review in 2026, next year, that the state's grant formula must be considered as a top priority. And if the formula is deemed out of step, then propose a formula change under Article 9A of the 1974 Social Security Law, or not. It depending on the considered professional fiscal actuarial findings. This would avoid the constant go-to pathway of withholding monies from the state's grant to supplement departments' wants and wishes and balance the books. We need, sir, to get our house in order. In times of budget setting and awareness of the proposed income, we must cut our cloth accordingly and live within our income and not automatically look to our pension pot and withhold or downdraw the money via its funding stream to balance the books, which is technically the government overspending by up to 50 million plus every year going forward. What's going to happen in 2030? Having said all this, I do need to declare that I'm in an awful dilemma as an Assistant Minister for Health, where some of these proposed withheld monies are being diverted from the Social Security grant and directed to the Health Department to support digital and public health preventative developments. As members are aware, I feel most strongly that our pension pot must be protected. However, the Health Department needs investment. I would like to have seen a full actuarial report brought forward during 2025, first to see exactly where we were before the proposed action from withholding monies from the grants for 25 to 29 to invest in departments and balance the books. We need the facts first, and if the grant formula needs to be changed following the full actual review, then so be it, and have the grant reduced. This would in turn reduce states' grant monies, but we will be all winners with a strong directive going forward, balancing the books and protecting our Social Security pot. May I conclude by relaying the famous quote by Mr. Micawber, who is a fictional character in the Charles Dickens 1850 novel, David Copperfield. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, 19 and 6. Result is happiness. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £20 and 6. Result is misery. The famous quote is essentially saying that it's better to live within your means than to spend more than you earn. Thank you, sir, and members, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. And I rise to support this amendment because I think it goes to the heart of trust in government. to the rule of law and to our responsibility to future generations of islanders. Only 2 years ago, ministers gave solemn undertakings to this Assembly that the value of the state's grant to the Social Security Fund wouldn't be reduced. Those assurances were placed on record and members relied on them, and the public took reassurance from them. Yet since then, as we've heard from Deputy Ward, the grant has been cut. In 2025, again in 2026, and also including 17.6 million to fund capital spending. These decisions have already been taken, and this amendment doesn't seek to reverse them. But what it does challenge is something I think that is far more serious: the open admission in this budget that these funds are now being treated as a convenient source of cash. The idea that these funds were somehow protected from short-term political pressure has quietly disappeared. Indeed, the government now argues that there's too much money in our funds and that maintaining the current grant is an inefficient use of that fund. I consider that quite a curious position to take. The size of the state's grant is not determined by political preference. As we heard from the previous speaker, it's set by statute. Article 9A of the Social Security Jersey law establishes a very clear formula for calculating what must be paid into the fund. And the obligation to follow that formula, to my mind, is a legal one. If the government believes it no longer reflects reality, then surely the proper course of action is to seek actuarial advice and change the law transparently, not quietly empty the reserves while hoping no one notices. The Fiscal Policy Panel could not have been clearer. In its annual report, it warned drawdowns from the Social Security Reserve Fund should only be made on the basis of a comprehensive actuarial assessment of future pension liabilities, and it explicitly stated that the decision to withdraw funds and reduce contributions before the full actuarial review had been published was not prudent. And again, all members who've already spoken have reiterated that. So, if our independent fiscal watchdog describes this course of action as not prudent, then I hope the Assembly will pay attention. What is the point of an independent panel if government do not follow its advice? Why is the government acting in this way? The answer, in truth, is not complicated. I don't think it's ideology, it's arithmetic. The government is spending more than it's receiving in income, and it's choosing to bridge the gap, not by controlling expenditure or by taking difficult decisions, but by dipping into reserve funds. Around 50 million is to be denied to the Social Security Fund each year. And not coincidentally, as we've heard, the growth allocations in this budget are also about £50 million per year. In other words, the funds are not being used for emergencies or demographic pressures or unforeseen circumstances. They are simply being used to pay the bills. And I would assert, sir, that's not financial planning. That is a deferral of responsibility. The government tells the public that it is spending within its means, but it's only doing so by reducing funds that should be set aside for future pensioners. And members should ask themselves the simple question: what is going to happen in 2029 when this funding tap is turned off? Nothing in this budget answers that question. This amendment takes a balanced and responsible approach. It doesn't deny the financial pressures facing government. It doesn't pretend that there are easy answers. But what it does do is to reduce the scale of the withdrawals from the Social Security Fund by half, and to reset the state's grant at 75 million rather than the 50 million until the actuary has properly reported. It's not ideological, it is cautious, and it's sensible. And above all, sir, I think it is responsible. The amendment identifies strategic reserve as the technical funding source, not because the proposer believes it should be used, but as we all know, any amendment must identify some mechanism. The clear intention is to place pressure on government to do what this budget has failed to do: review spending, control growth, and restore fiscal discipline. The strategic reserve should not be run down to avoid hard decisions. It should be strengthened, not depleted. But ultimately, sir, I believe this amendment is about sustainability. It's about honesty in public finance, and it's about fairness between generations. We should not be treating these funds as a balancing figure in a spreadsheet. And sir, for that reason, I'm going to support this amendment, not as an act of opposition, but as an act of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy.
So, would it be appropriate to ask the Solicitor General a question at this moment, or I can wait till later?
You can ask now if you want to.
There was an allegation, I think, or suggestion from the previous speaker that what's being proposed by government somehow contravenes the law and what is required of funds being put into the Social Security Fund. Is that the Solicitor General's understanding?
Solicitor General.
No, it's not my understanding. The only law that has to be conformed to is under Articles 4 and 9A of the Social Security law, which sets the formula by which the amount of the grant into the Social Security Fund is to be determined. But I don't see anything else that it raises issues of law.
So I'm wondering if it's probably too late to ask clarification from the previous speaker then, whether she wants to reconsider those comments, which might seem to be misleading to the Assembly.
So I'm happy to,
Yes.
what I said was that the obligation to follow that formula is a legal one, and I believe that has what the Solicitor General has just confirmed.
Thank you. Yes, Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. It's clear from the arguments made by the Treasury Minister just now that either way we're taking money from our state's funds, and in either position our funds will be weaker. This clearly shows that the activity of drawing from these funds for day-to-day expenditure is a challenge to our financial sustainability. And members are left in a bind in amending government budgets. The Treasury Minister just highlighted that only 2 amendments to this year's budget seek to reduce expenditure. If she and her other ministers cast their minds back to last year, I believe I proposed the only amendment to reduce expenditure in a government plan which did not reallocate this. That was for the transform budget. In response, the government line was that I did not have sufficient information to make this request, despite themselves providing no business case or evidence that demonstrated the precise need for the new expenditure. So, sir, what are members to do when government can treat itself to new expenditure, and this is new expenditure, as ministers have shared in communications on social media, yet when other members wish to have information about the sustainability of these, as we've heard from Deputy Balash, and that despite continued requests, the government will not seek the information to inform members themselves as to how to make decisions. So in some ways, Sir, Deputy Balash's 4th amendment, like his for Regent 1 later, seeks us to confront the decision and challenge the impacts in making it. By staring down a reduction of the strategic reserve, which as a minister, Deputy Andrews and others have highlighted is an important aspect, we are asked in crystal clear terms, is our new expenditure sustainable? It's amusing that this is the same budget that proposes an in-principle agreement for the Capital Investment Fund and suggests that this fund will be a better delivery model because we will be able to hypothecate the money for what is needed when they're into the long term. What confidence can we have when the government can't hypothecate now? We were told last year that the drawdown of the fund for the Better Business Support grant was a minor drawdown and aligned to the aims of the fund. £10 million per year, I believe. This year, the government has not just doubled down, they have quintupled down on what they are seeking to withdraw. We are eroding the culture of good management of our funds, and comparing where we are to last year, I'm reminded of the folk and kind of camp song that goes as follows. The cow kicked Fred in the head in the barn. The doctor said it would do no harm. So we all kicked Fred in the head in the barn. The next verse, the same as the first, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. So we see the trajectory we are on. What we have to do, however, is face head-on our expenditure and its consequences. We should be under no illusion that Deputy Balash's amendment does not solve the problem, but it does force us to make a hard decision, wear the weight of that decision on our shoulders, and perhaps, just perhaps, focus our minds into delivering within a model that allows us to live within our means.
Thank you, Deputy. Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Gorst.
I'm not sure I've got much new to say, but I will say something new because otherwise I'd be in breach of standing orders. So, when Deputy Balash gave his opening speech, it was in his normal, eloquent and powerful style. And he made points which I think the Assembly need to carefully consider. But the choice before us, to my mind, is a simple one, because we're not being asked in regard to the spend that would be affected. No member, apart from Deputy Moore in another amendment, has said that the health spending shouldn't happen. No member has said that the increased spend on nursery places shouldn't happen, and on we go. The question is, and you referred to this, a speech given by a former Connétable of St Martin about which jar from the mantelpiece are we going to take the money to do this important health work. And it is a straightforward decision. Are we going to not put as much money into that pot on the mantelpiece as we would normally do in any given year, because there's already lots in it, because the health provision needs to be provided for, and it's still going to be able to provide for our pensions if we don't put that additional money in? Or are we going to go to another pot, the strategic reserve, which has got less money in it and has not, if members and ministers and governments want to look anywhere about where governments haven't saved for the future, it is in the strategic reserve, and the FPP have been clear in their reports for many a year that more money should be put into the strategic reserve for an economic shock. Members in their questions and in their commentary have talked about the economic uncertainty that the world is facing. We all know that, and yet this is an amendment that says we'll take money out of the fund that will help us deal with the economic shock so that we can so that the taxpayers can put additional money into the Social Security Reserve Fund. What's the difference in the size of the funds? Well, we know that, so don't we? About 2.5 billion in the pension fund, and it is important that islanders listening realise that there is £2.5 billion in the pension fund, and when we do a pension fund calculation and say there's only 7 years worth of spend in the fund, and we try to indicate that that's not very much, we must be clear to islanders that that is a 7-year worth of spend on pensions if no money was going into the fund, if no islander was making a social security contribution from their salary. It's a simple mathematical calculation, but it shows the strength of the fund. No government is ever going to, that I can think of, going to remove social security contributions. We're never going to be in the situation where no money is going into the fund. This is a question of whether taxpayers should put the same amount of money into the fund as they might have intended doing, or it should fairly be reduced to allow for funding on health. And on balance, despite the good points made by many speakers who are going to support this amendment, it makes no financial or economic sense to not do what is proposed in the budget, but rather take money from the strategic reserve. It's quite poignant that we're having this debate at the start of this budget, because so members know that I come from a tradition of balanced budgets, of reducing or making efficiencies. Some of my coalition colleagues will accuse me of having previously presented austerity budgets, but they have never ever answered the question, how can it be austerity when we started at one level and at the end of a governmental period we were still delivering the same amount in the budget. But let's not have that debate now. The reason, because then we will be out with standing orders. The reason I make this point, and that it's an important debate to start with, is because Western economies can no longer afford to fund healthcare in the way that they are. And I know that the Minister will want to say more about this. They can no longer afford it. The decisions before this Assembly in the future and before the electorate next year are not dissimilar to the decisions that the whole of Europe is facing. It's going to be probably impossible to fund what health needs. And we all know that at the last election, not sure what Irelanders are going to tell us at the forthcoming election, at the last election, they had story after story about waiting lists and about conditions that they were suffering from. Never critical of the staff at the hospital, always felt that they were doing their best, but critical of the system within which they were operating and the fact that somehow we were never spending enough money. And as I say, it's not new to us, it's not unique to Jersey. And the reason I say that is because we are going to have some long, hard conversations about our reserve funds, about how we fund health, about the health insurance fund, about the use of insurance schemes. And whether we like it or not, this budget, as presented, can work for the year that is 2026. But it will need to have those difficult decisions made in 26 and 27. The work is ongoing. I know the Health Minister is doing a lot of this work and his team. But there will be no easy answers in the future. And if members want this government and they want ministers to think about spending within their means and managing that spend, then that will be done and should be done in those pieces of work which will be coming forward in due course. Not in the way that the proposer is asking in this amendment. It makes no economic or financial sense to spend that money from the stabilisation fund. If we were being asked, let's just not do the work, and therefore we didn't need to take the money from the supplementation calculation, totally different question, and we'll get to that one later in the day. But as far as this is concerned, sir, I urge members not to, as eloquently as a number of speakers have made this sound, as sensible as they've made it sound, when you drill into it, it's not a logical way to deal with public finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Do members wish to adjourn now?
Sir, before we adjourn, it's Deputy Dublé. May I just inform the Assembly that I have a commitment over the lunchtime period relating to parental responsibilities, which may see me returning slightly later to the Assembly. I'd wanted to inform members of the reason why.
Thank you, Deputy. The Assembly is adjourned until 2:15.